Hey guys, sorry for the wait. I knew some of you were going to be late, so I decided to wait a few minutes in solidarity. As if I'm not late every night, no? Um, so yesterday, I legitimately thought it was Wednesday all day until like 8 p.m. And then I looked at my calendar app and I was like, oh shit, tomorrow's Friday. So I actually didn't even realize today was going to be the end of the week until last night. There's been a lot going on. Obviously, this stuff came out. God, what was it, Wednesday night? And it feels like it was ages ago. Because I spent hours and hours going over that into the dead of the night, which was, sometimes it's tiring, but it's still kind of fun, right? Because I like to do that with everybody. I could read them by myself, but then it would be like, well, this is kind of lame. Who am I supposed to talk to? Even though technically I'm just talking at the screen. So I haven't gotten through everything as far as the exhibits and all that. I do want to just go over this one deposition tonight. This is Alex Sachs, one of the producers, the only female producer, I believe, on the set. And she was the one that Blake Lively said Justin Baldoni had, screamed at in anger, and at one point slammed a chair with his hands. And this is going to be the pages of her deposition. It's not the whole thing, but we have the transcript of the sections that they did release with the exhibits. So we'll go through that. One of the things that seemed interesting when I kind of went over it the first time, I haven't read it all through yet, but when I skimmed over it the first time, she, says she doesn't recall or remember a lot of important details relating to what Blake says made this a hostile environment for women. But when it comes to, remembering what other women didn't like about Justin or Jamie or whoever, she has no problem remembering, substantial details of that. So it's just kind of convenient. I feel like her answers were very convenient. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that necessarily. Well, no, that doesn't make sense. I'm not going to finish that thought. Hang on. I want to address a couple things in the comments here real quick, but I will share the screen so you guys can see this when it's time. I saw when I was waiting to start, people were talking about the audio that was picked up today. Clark went and got the audio from the courthouse, and it's a 2-minute recording, and it's the voice of who is, it's safe to assume it's Jed Wallace, and it's part of the Skyline Agency. I think they're the discovery from them, which it's a recording of Jed talking, and the Skyline Agency, if you guys don't remember, they put together the website, thelawsuitinfo.com, which is the Wayfair Party's website where they uploaded their lawsuit and their timeline that was attached to the lawsuit, which are both publicly available court documents, but they put it out there so it would be more available to the press and to people who are interested to read their side of the story. And it's protected, just like what Blake wrote and the New York Times covered was protected by the litigation privilege. So she's trying to say that that was somehow defamatory, which is interesting and very hypocritical, and that was part of a smear campaign when it's protected speech by the litigation privilege, or not speech, but writing, whatever, accusations, blah blah blah. It's protected by the litigation privilege, and she did the same thing, and then went to the New York Times, and was not very transparent in doing so, and possibly illegally obtained some of the evidence that she presented, right? So it's very hypocritical that she's upset about that, but she did make a whole big deal out of this website. And so she wanted the voice recordings from Jed and the Wayfair parties regarding this website. And if you listen to the recording, it's not about like the sexual harassment or anything like that. And he's not really talking about anything that happened during the period after filming and leading up to the premiere and directly after it when all this kind of blew up. He's talking about stuff that's happening in January, I think January or February 2025. So that's not within the period where he was just hired to do social media monitoring, which I think is an important context, because some people are saying he's doing, more than just monitoring. And now he's like, he lied about that. Oh my God, he perjured himself. But no, remember the period of time they were asking him about when he was hired was that, period right after the premiere or right around the premiere, when he was doing social media monitoring, and they had that whole scenario planning and all that. But we've seen the messages between them where he's saying Justin is organically getting support, Blake's getting bad press organically. That's the period of time in which he was saying he was only doing monitoring. So when people are now saying Jed like perjured himself or something, no, this was after the lawsuits were filed. So after the initial complaints were filed. So that's not the same circumstance, right? She later amended her complaint to say that the smear campaign was ongoing and accused Brian Friedman and Justin's attorneys of being part of the smear campaign. So I don't know. That's a whole mess, which is ridiculous if you ask me. But in that recording, you can hear Jed Wallace say, "I've never operated a bot in my life." And saying, like, I don't know where people get that. People think that I have a secret bot army. I'm like, I've never operated a bot in my life. And Blake Lively's whole thing with Jed Wallace, who's now been dismissed from the lawsuit, by the way. He was dismissed the first time. Blake Lively amended her complaint, and then he got dismissed again. He was dismissed from that. And her whole thing with him was that he operates in the shadows, controlling some sort of bot army from all around that, led this smear campaign and pushed all these negative things about her to the forefront of the internet. And he's on record behind the scenes in a message that he doesn't know that anyone would ever hear, saying, I can't help you the way that you think I can help you because I've never operated a bot in my life. So why she thinks that that is helpful to her, I don't know. Well, if you have to really bend and stretch there to try to get something that sounds nefarious, he was talking about WeTransfer files. And WeTransfer files, if you guys have never used that, like my friends and I have used them to send videos to each other. So you upload it to WeTransfer. The person then has a set time to download what they sent you through the WeTransfer link, and then it expires. And so they also said, I believe, and I'll have to go back and look at the transcript of the recording. I'll do a separate thing on this tomorrow. They also said that they had been stolen from before. So it's important to use stuff like that. So yeah, that's kind of the background on the audio. But like I said, I'll do more about that tomorrow. So she's trying to bend and stretch this and say, see, he uses WeTransfer links, like he knows how to make stuff disappear into thin air. Like if that were true, babe, all you would have to do is subpoena what was downloaded from the WeTransfer link from the person who received it. It's actually quite simple. But good try, though, I guess. All right. Let me pull this up real quick. And at some point, because my eyes are so tired and I'm like exhausted, I might turn off the face cam just so I can turn off the lights around me because they're really bright. And it just makes it easier. But for right now, we'll leave it on. Okay. Let me make this a little bit bigger so everyone can read it while I'm going through it. Okay. So this is a deposition of Alex Sachs, who, like I said earlier, was the producer that Blake Lively named a lot in her response to the summary judgment motion. Now, mind you, none of this was ever brought up before. And this is all stuff that Blake Lively was well aware of if things happened the way that they're alleging it they happened. This is stuff that she was well aware of when she filed her initial complaints, her amended complaint, and her next amended complaint. Like, there was no reason that she couldn't bring this up at that point, but for some reason they didn't. And the way that they frame things in this deposition, you can see Gottlieb kind of leading her to certain places, and you can see that she says, "Oh, I don't remember," when it comes to very important, key events that Blake Lively is alleging happened. And then, she conveniently does remember other things. So it's just kind of interesting. Let me see really quick if I can do something to make these lights a little bit easier on me. Just give me 1 sec here. Okay, unfortunately that didn't work the way that I wanted it to, but it's fine. I'll just leave it on, and at some point if I need to turn it off, it's fine. But okay. So at some point, like I said, this is not the full thing. These are just the excerpts that we're, allowed to see. And at some points it will, in the middle of some very interesting parts, unfortunately cut off. And we've seen that with all the deposition stuff that's come out, right? Because if we could, I would sit here and read the whole thing for all of these. But unfortunately, that's not how that works. It's not just freely available to the public. Okay. So in the first part of this, they're talking about June Pictures, which is a company that she co-owned. She was saying that she was there as a producer. We don't have to read too much through this because it's just background on her as a producer. But I do want to point out that June Pictures was co-owned by somebody named Andrew Duncan. Am I missing the sound? No, I think you might just be a little bit behind. I just turned it back on. If you guys are having a problem with the sound, let me know and I'll fix it. So Andrew Duncan, who co-owned June Pictures with her, at one point there was an article that came out from the Hollywood Reporter with anonymous women making complaints that he had been, somehow sexually inappropriate and appropriated funds to buy prostitutes. And it all, to him, per his account, kind of came out of nowhere. No one ever came forward. No one ever filed a complaint or sued anyone in court or anything like that. It was just anonymous women who had talked to the Hollywood Reporter who were able to get this story out there that completely ruined his reputation. Now, I don't know anything really about Andrew Duncan, but this is a topic that has come up a lot, obviously, in the last couple of days because of Alex Sachs's involvement here. Andrew Duncan got pushed out of the company after that, and Alex Sachs bought him out and then took over the whole thing for herself. So I don't know, I just want to point out again, I don't know Andrew Duncan. I don't know anything about Andrew Duncan. And in the interest of just being very cautious when it comes to other women's accusations of, other women's accusations of abuse or harassment who aren't Blake Lively and I don't know to be liars, okay? I want to be careful and not say for certain that Alex Sachs did anything super wrong, as if nothing ever happened, because I don't know who the anonymous women were. There is a possibility that there was a woman or multiple women who felt somehow wrong or uncomfortable or who were mistreated by Andrew Duncan. So I want to be careful with that. But there are some just interesting connections there, right? But I do want to be really careful with that. So that's kind of why I saw the articles that were being posted and I was like, I don't want to come out right away and say too much about this. But since it's June Pictures is being brought up here in the deposition, I feel like I did want to just kind of lay down some of the background on that. But people are saying at the very least, like with Blake Lively, who's very opportunistic, and when she decides that other women's plights are important to her, I see Harvey Weinstein, Woody Allen, who she's shown herself to be fond of despite what they were alleged to have done. It's kind of, unfortunate that we're seeing a connection to someone else who may have, if the scenario as it was outlined by Andrew Duncan is true, if it's true, someone else who ignored complaints of women who were being abused or harassed and then waited until it would benefit them to actually do anything about it to where she could take over the company. So that is a possible scenario that could be, like I said, it's just kind of an interesting connection to make if things happen the way that they're outlined. So I'll put it that way. But I do just want to be really careful because people forget because of the way that, well, it's been so long, almost a year since I started talking about this stuff. People forget that when I started looking into Justin's case, I started with Blake's complaint. And I did that because I was a casual Blake Lively fan. I wasn't a super fan. I wasn't a fan girl. You know what I mean? But I was a casual Blake Lively fan. I liked her work. I really liked Ryan's work, his movies. I thought he was a funny guy. And I thought that their dynamic as a couple on social media where they're really sarcastic with each other, that was my kind of humor. And I thought it was I don't know, kind of endearing. So I was like, oh, I like these guys. They're funny, right? So I would watch. Yeah, I watched Gossip Girl. I watched The Shallows. I watched, I'm sure, another movie or two with Blake. I think Accepted was one of them I really liked. I watched all of Ryan's Deadpool movies. I watched The Proposal. I really liked. That was one of my favorite movies. I liked that one. So I was a casual fan, right? And that's why I started reading this stuff. And so I was very cautious with Blake's claims in the beginning. But you can see, if anybody goes back to the first video I ever did on this case, you can see that even without ever knowing anything that Justin Baldoni said, when I read her complaint, there was some stuff in there that I said, this doesn't make sense. This seems to be missing some context. Something's not right here. And then when I did finally get to hear his side of the story, then I started to feel very differently. And the footage that came out, the dance scene footage, was what really kind of nailed it in. Because if you go back to her initial complaint, not the amended ones, the initial complaint, and you look at how she described the dance scene and how she describes it as him like running his lips up all on her and like doing all kinds of crazy shit. And that's not what happened. And people would, start to say you weren't there. And I would say, well, I didn't have to be there because the footage of it is right here on the internet. And I can see that with my own two eyes, and then more and more stuff came out that contradicted what she was saying. And then, I got to a place where it was just so undeniable that she wasn't telling the truth. And as somebody who's been through some pretty awful experiences myself, it made me feel really mad. I felt like personally very mad about that. Because I never came forward with my own stuff and I never will. And it makes me mad that people like Blake Lively, who have all the money, the power, and everything they could ever want in the world, would abuse the system like this to squash someone that they don't like because she couldn't get what she wanted, as if she couldn't have anything else in the world. So yeah, it took a long time. And then when she decided to subpoena my information, with the information fully out there that I was a fan of hers, and then I read her words and her interpretation of events, and I found out that she wasn't an honest person. She subpoenaed my information saying that I was paid by Justin Baldoni, or implying heavily that I was paid by Justin Baldoni, based on what her lawyers were saying about the content creator subpoenas and filings and statements. That's when I knew that nobody, not just Justin, but nobody that she had accused had done what she accused them of. And I know there's some stuff with the publicist that's honestly still a little. Some of the stuff with the publicist, I'll be honest, the crisis PR team with Melissa Nathan and the feud with Stephanie Jones, it doesn't look great sometimes. It doesn't always look great, but that has nothing to do with Justin or Jamie. And it honestly doesn't have much to do with Blake. That's all to do with Stephanie Jones' feud with Melissa Nathan. And it's a separate but related case. So anyways, now that my rant is over, I just wanted to give you guys some background about why I'm so careful with people's claims. Because I don't just jump into things and be like, oh, she sounds like a liar, so I'm going to go ahead and call her a cunt. You know what I mean? That's not who I am. I don't just come into things like that. And I'm not going to start doing that now just because I don't like the people that Alex Sachs or Andrew Duncan or whoever are in a kind of universe with, right? So just wanted to clear that up. Anyways, I will get on with it. Give me one second. Okay. So, they're just talking about June pictures here. The Andrew Duncan stuff doesn't come up in here at all. It's just something that came up in the background when people found these documents, were going through them, and they said, oh, there was a situation with Alex Sachs and a man named Andrew Duncan. So that's when that came up, but it doesn't come up here, at least not to my knowledge. Okay. So how often were you on the set in New Jersey? She says, every day. I think there's one day that I missed because I had the premiere of No Hard Feelings. And then the last 2 days of shooting on the second round in January 2024, I had already jumped onto another movie, so I didn't come back to Los Angeles. Okay. Did you report to Mr. Baldoni as the director? Yes. Okay. And did you also report to Mr. Heath as the CEO and co-studio head? She said, yes. They were your bosses. Yes. Okay. They mentioned Angie Giannetti, who's going to come up again at some points when we're reading these depositions. She was the EVP at Sony, who was our day-to-day creative. How often do you recall Miss Giannetti being on set? In the first round, she was there for a few days, maybe more than that. Definitely more than a normal executive is there in my experience. And then on the second round, she was there most days. I mean, we know why the second round was a little bit different, right? That was after the 17-point list. So, man, there's some stuff going on with my hair. All right. As a producer of, it sounds like, a decade, is it important to you that the cast and crew working on your projects have an outlet through which to report concerns about behavior in the workplace? She says yes. It's required practice on film sets that cast and crew members have a place to report concerns, right? Alex says, I don't know. Let me see the page here. So they skip here, which is interesting. From page 53 to page 57, right after he asked that question, they don't show her answer. And with the HR stuff that they're getting into right now, I recall that Wayfarer had on the call sheets they gave out every day to people who came to the set to work. Every day they had a sheet of paper they would give them that also had a number that they could call to report to somebody outside of what was going on the set if they had any concerns about any kind of like HR concerns or concerns about, unsafe sets or sexual harassment or anything like that. So they're obviously not going to bring that up here, right? But it was brought up in the motion for summary judgment because Blake and others chose not to exercise their right to do that. And as we know, like, no matter what they're saying here now, you have to keep in mind, these people had mechanisms to report these things. Like, Blake Lively, where is your report that you made to the Screen Actors Guild? Okay, they had mechanisms to report these things and chose not to, and actually multiple times refused investigation, refused to make a report when they were asked if they would, if they wanted to. So, and then at least one point said, I didn't feel that what happened was sexual. I just didn't like it. Which is fine. You are well within your rights to say, like, I don't like the way that my boss just talked to me. I don't like something that they just said. I feel like it was inappropriate for the workplace. You totally have a right to do that. But if you go out of your way to say, no, I don't really want to make a formal report because I feel like it wasn't malicious and it wasn't sexual in nature, you can't then turn around and be like, well, I felt like I was being sexually harassed and I wanted to report it, but nobody tried to help. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't know how to do it or nobody tried to help me. Like, because that's not what happened. But of course, Michael Gottlieb, keep in mind, Michael Gottlieb is not going to ask the kind of questions that would lead to those answers. We need to keep in mind here, this is going to be a very one-sided kind of conversation. We're not going to see anything here that would allude to any of the evidence that the Wayfarer parties put forth in their motion for summary judgment. So we're only getting one side of the story here. And I don't find it to be a particularly credible one. But okay. Did you understand whether HR would be available on set to cast and crew of the film? Eventually. When did you become aware? At some point in early prep, when we were starting to crew up and hire people. Is it your understanding that Wayfarer does have a human resources department? She says, I don't know. Now, bear in mind that I don't know here. They're going to say, like, I'm sure they're going to at some point try to frame it if they didn't already. I'm sorry, some of the details have escaped me because I read through it once in the response to the summary judgment. They will at some point try to say, like, people didn't even know that there was an HR department. People didn't even know they could report to HR, right? But the thing is, with the I don't know here, she also says, I don't know, I don't remember, to some pretty key events that happened on the set. So forgive me if I don't particularly take her I don't know as a confirmation that there was anything ambiguous. She just seems to have a poor memory, which is fine. I mean, I have that problem too sometimes. For me, it's the ADD. I don't know, man. Okay. Do you know was there a designated individual who would perform human resources functions on the film? She says, I believe it was a number or an email that people contacted. Okay. And then if I remember correctly, there was a third party. But I don't believe Wayfarer had official human resources. And I think that they do. I think that they do, but somebody in the comments, or I'm sure multiple of you will, can you guys confirm that Wayfair does in fact have an HR department? Because some of you guys remember the details of the MSJ better than I do because I read it weeks ago. So, all right. But I'm pretty sure they do. Anyways. Is it your recollection that there was a third party to provide human resources functions to cast and crew on set? She says, I don't remember. Do you have any memory of who that third party may have been? She says, I don't. As someone who was on set every day, did you know who you could speak to if you had concerns about Wayfair or any behavior on set? She says, yeah. They said, who? She says, Jamie. Okay, but the thing is, she's saying here that she doesn't remember that there was a third party to provide human resources function. She doesn't remember. Not there wasn't. I remember that there wasn't. The only person I could go to was Jamie. She's saying, I don't remember if there was someone else I could have talked to. I wasn't paying attention, basically. Right? So it's there. Okay. So Cynthia Barnes Slater, I thought was the HR person, but I didn't want to get that wrong. But thank you very much. You guys are right. Don't fuck with justice. DFJ has all the facts. So yeah. But anyways, thank you very much. Appreciate the quick responses, guys. Helps me out a lot. As much as I spend, as much time as I spend going over this stuff, my poor little ADHD brain, sometimes I can't retain every single bit of information unless I've read it over a couple times, and I just haven't had time to do that with the recent stuff, with the holiday and then being sick and all that. So appreciate that. Okay. Anyways. Your understanding as a producer on the film was that if you had concerns about behavior on set, you should raise them to Mr. Heath. She says, yeah, as the copyright owner / signer of checks and agreements, and without there being an official one HR person, it was really just easiest to go to him as the boss. Okay. As a producer on set, did you understand who you could raise concerns to about behavior if the person you were concerned about was Mr. Heath? She says, still Mr. Heath. Okay, but up here, again, hold on. Do you know, was there a designated individual who would perform human resources functions on the film? She says, I believe it was a number or an email that people contacted. And then if I remember correctly, there was a third party. There was a third party. Okay, but then down here she says, if she has a complaint about Mr. Heath, she should still contact Jamie. What gives? Babe, your memory just changed from 11:05:59 to 11:06:48. I mean, what the hell? Like, this is not a difficult thing to understand. You remember, even with your terrible memory, hon, you remember that there was a third party you could have talked to. But then at the same time, you're saying, no, I had to talk to Jamie. Okay. That's what I'm saying. Some of this shit is so ridiculous. Why are the people in the comments blowing up about the Muffin Man? Some of you need to explain that to me right now. But baby girl, what the fuck is wrong with these people? I mean, saying that in one breath in 1 minute and then saying the opposite in the next is insane to me. But I can't say I'm totally surprised, I guess. This is kind of akin to me. This is like, it's on the board of unreasonable things, top 5 to 10 unreasonable things of this whole saga, with saying the word birthing or birthed is sexual. Like, what the fuck? So like we have really huge issues like this that are not being covered in the mainstream media, of course, and the headlines in the last couple of days have been so frustrating. So one of them was, of course, the thing about Justin Baldoni saying that he was circumcised, and the media, TMZ in particular, has made it sound like he just brought that up randomly to his employee in like a completely inappropriate random context. So what happened was she was not his employee at the time of that conversation. This was years ago. Her husband was present, and the nannies of the children that she had were present, and she was about to give birth to her first baby boy. Now, one would think, just using your critical thinking skills, that a group of parents and nannies who are talking about their firstborn baby boy, and we have that on the one side. On the other side, we have Justin Baldoni said something about circumcision. One might think that the thing that connects those two dots might be that the group of parents and nannies were talking about circumcision. And I know that some people think that's gross and nasty, but one, it's definitely not sexual. Two, she wasn't an employee. Three, they had a very friendly rapport that muddied the water of their professional relationships on both sides, I'll add. On both sides. Justin and Blake both did that, looking at their text, because he thought they were friends. Right? And then the last point there, like, even if you think it's gross to talk to friends about circumcision when it comes to the birth of your baby boy, other people don't. It's a cultural, religious thing for many people. And it might have come up in that conversation as, I'm not sure about circumcision because of XYZ. And I have concerns about XYZ. And he could have said, well, I was circumcised, or my parents had me circumcised, and I never had that problem. I never had that issue. Or the opposite. He could have said, well, my parents had me circumcised, and I wish they hadn't. We don't know. But at the end of the day, Blake Lively came out and said that that was a random description of his genitalia, as if it was something that happened on set for funsies. Like, hey, girl, look at this dick. There's no foreskin there. You know what I mean? Like, that's not what happened. So, yeah, these headlines have been ridiculous. And so, like, the stuff that comes out in these depositions, or the fact that they come out in depositions and the media acts like it was they made a press statement, like with the Taylor Swift stuff, has been so bizarre over the last few days. I'm like, there's so much more to this story, so much more bizarre details of this story, that he could get you even more clicks if that's honestly what you're looking for as a TMZ or a Variety or a larger news outlet, and you're just passing on it. Why? Because you want to tell Blake Lively's side of the story. Not because there's not like juicy information here that you could pass off in the tabloids as something that gets you a lot of money and a lot of attention. It's because you are beholden to WME. Because if you scorn WME, who represents Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, you're fucked on other fronts with all of WME, the superpowers, other clients. So I think it's very telling that the stuff that Alex Sachs is saying here in this deposition doesn't matter at all in the headlines. That's just my opinion. So, give me 1 second. I mean, my God, the mainstream media of this world acts like the man was raffling off his foreskin. I swear to God, like, this is so stupid. Hey, girl, my parents cut it off when I was a baby. How much is it worth to you? Like, what the fuck is wrong with you guys? All right. Anyways, moving on. Okay, so she's saying she didn't have the memory of the third party. She thinks she only can complain to Jamie. My lives are so unhinged, whether I'm alone or not, by the way, everyone. Just want to let you know. If you're new here, this is what you can expect on a regular basis. Your understanding as a producer on the film was that if you had concerns about behavior on set, you should raise them to Mr. Heath. Okay, and then she says, yeah, blah, 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 signs the checks. Okay, still Mr. Heath. If you had a problem with Mr. Heath, you should still raise it to Mr. Heath, is what she says. So was your understanding that if you had, concerns about Mr. Heath's behavior, you would raise those to him? She says, correct. Okay. It's just making sure these are the same. Yeah, we have some continuity here. I always have to check and make sure the pages are back to back. Okay. The first document I handed you is marked as Exhibit 1. It's an email dated March 12th, and it bears the bait stamp, or whatever. Okay. This is an email that you sent. She says, yes. To Jamie Heath, among others. Yes. Okay. The second document I sent you is marked as Exhibit 2, blah, blah, blah. So we're not going to read too much into that. All right. Okay. As of March 12th, 2023, when you sent this email, did you know whether Wayfarer had workplace harassment protocols in place? She says, it looks like I didn't. And at that time, you proposed that because of Justin's role, the harassment protocols come from Sony. Is that right? Correct. Okay. What did you mean when you wrote, because of Justin's role at Wayfarer, our workplace harassment protocols should come from Sony? She says, I assume I meant. What do you mean you assume you meant? You wrote that. What do you mean you assume you meant? Okay. I assume I meant because he was the director, co-lead actor, and co-owned the studio. Okay. Were you concerned that as co-lead actor, director, and co-owner of the studio, people may not feel comfortable raising concerns to Mr. Baldoni? She says, correct. Did you have any other concerns with respect to Wayfarer overseeing the human resources or harassment protocols on set? She says, because Wayfarer, it became clear that they were a less experienced studio. The idea of Sony being responsible for something so important made me feel more secure. I said, all cast and crew reported to Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath on set. Correct. She says, yes. They were everyone's boss. She says, yes, and me as well. But again, Mr. Heath, as the signer of checks, technical copyright holder, CEO, and owner of the film, technically was the boss. Okay. I just want to point out here that there are some points where I agree that Wayfarer could have done things that would have protected them better. But as she mentions here, they were a relatively inexperienced studio. And I think that Wayfarer, being the people that they are, with their values and their kind of kumbaya set, which is, I know people have said their toxic positivity is like, so like they're the most complaints they had gotten before this was the toxic positivity, right? So they have such a kumbaya set. It's like, why would we need Sony to handle HR? Why would we need to do this or that? I could understand why they would do that, but I could also see why if they had had a little bit more experience, they may have deferred to Sony to handle HR. That doesn't mean that anything bad happened to the point where I think that they believe to be punished, right? I just think that if they had deferred some things to Sony, maybe it would help, like in the future, you know, when they're working on projects like this, maybe it would help in the future if they did defer those things so that people can't take advantage of them the way that they did. But like, if you're a decent human being, why would you expect people to behave the way that these people have behaved, right? So at the same time, why would you think it's necessary? You have an HR department. Why would you think it's necessary? You know what I mean? So I understand both sides of this. And I just want to say, like, sometimes there are things that I feel like Wayfarer could have done better. I don't think they're guilty of anything nefarious ever, but, you know, I do think there are things they could have done better. So, all right. Okay. Let's talk about that. Did you also have concerns about Wayfarer overseeing the human resources function for the film, given Mr. Heath's role as CEO? She says, less so aside from his lesser experience. The question was, you proposed that Sony provided harassment training for cast and crew. Is that right? She says, correct. Turn your attention to Exhibit 2. Are you confirming in this email that Mr. Heath agreed with you that Sony should provide? And then here's another time where they cut it off. And I think that's really interesting. Again, this is a very, very important question and something that they raised in their response to the motion for summary judgment. And they cut this off. There was no reason to cut off her answer to that. But they did. Why do you think that is? Okay. Anyways, we're going to have to move on to the next topic because I have no control over what they redact here. Let me try to figure out what they're talking about here. This is an email from Mr. Baldoni to you dated February 19th, correct? Okay. If you direct your attention to the second paragraph, it reads, I want to apologize to the group, especially to Alex. Do you see that? She says, yes. What did you understand Mr. Baldoni to be apologizing to you for? She says, I believe the day before we were on a call or Zoom where he yelled at me. They said, Mr. Baldoni yelled at you. She said, I believe so. When you say he yelled at you, did he raise his voice? She says, I believe so. Do you recall who else was on the Zoom? She says, I believe everyone on the email chain, and it may have been a call. Miss Janetti, Mr. Kuloff, and these other people, I don't know, and Mr. Baldoni were in the meeting. She says, I don't know that AJ was. That's his assistant, but Angie, Jamie, and Kuloff probably were, along with Justin. What do you recall about this meeting in February 2023 in which Mr. Baldoni yelled at you? And here's why it's so interesting. Because Blake Lively claims that Justin Baldoni screamed at this woman multiple times in anger to the point it was a hostile work environment for women. And she says here in response to that question, what do you recall about this meeting in which Mr. Baldoni yelled at you? She says, I don't remember much. Wow. Okay. Okay. I don't remember much, but reading the email, I believe he was talking about his own abuse. Right. Yeah, when I tried to voice an opinion, he yelled at me, but I don't remember exactly what the words were. So not only does she not totally remember the topic, but she says, when I tried to voice an opinion, he yelled at me, but I don't remember exactly what the words were. Do you recall what the gist of what he yelled at you, what he yelled at you about? I don't. Do you recall what opinion you were voicing at the time? I don't. In the second paragraph, Mr. Baldoni writes, I feel I have failed at being a safe place for others, so I want to apologize if my behavior yesterday for me was not acceptable. I try very hard not to interrupt the women in my life, and unfortunately, I've been failing in that on quite a few occasions over the last few months, oftentimes and yesterday in particular to you. Do you see that? She says, yes. Did you agree with Mr. Baldoni that he had failed at being a safe place for others? She says, I have no idea. What kind of answer is that? It's a totally subjective opinion, and you could answer it right now. So Alex Sachs, the problem with Alex Sachs is that she played both sides to the point where during this deposition, there is no way she could have answered these things truthfully because she played both sides. And text messages between her and Baldoni and Heath will say a totally different thing than messages between her and Blake Lively, and she's fucked if she answers these questions honestly. My God. This is so dumb. So she's basically saying this entirely, okay, I'm not going to say entirely that, but basically saying this very key conversation, which Blake Lively is using to demonstrate that he yelled at women multiple times and made it a hostile environment. She doesn't really remember, but at the same time, she's confident enough to say to Blake Lively that it was hostile. So at this point, when she doesn't know so much about that meeting and what she was saying and what he said and how she felt, she expects people to believe that she, saying that he yelled or screamed or whatever, we're supposed to take that as fact anytime she says it when she doesn't recall so much. This is ridiculous. Okay. So, and I want to say this about Justin. Justin, from what I've come to learn about him because when I, support someone and I come out and say, I really don't believe this man did what people say he did, I pay attention, I do my research, I put in the time to understand that before I come out and say, I believe this woman is lying. Everybody who actually knows me, who's actually followed the things that I talk about when I follow this case, know how important it is to me to never make an accusation that a woman's lying unless I feel very, very confident. And there's actual concrete, real evidence out there that she didn't tell the truth. Okay. But in the same way, I'm not going to say I support the man or the accused in this situation unless I've done the research and I've gone and said, okay, I've heard what this person said. I've seen their personality and how they, conduct themselves. And I've learned a lot about them to the fact that I feel comfortable supporting them. I feel comfortable saying, I believe what he's saying. And from everything that I've come to learn about Justin, including, and I've said this publicly before, but some people don't hear it. So sometimes when I say this, people think it's a big deal, but no, I've said this before. Including talking to people who know Justin, who love Justin, and people who worked with Justin, even on this film. I did talk to people who worked with Justin on this film. I didn't ask them about Blake Lively. I didn't ask them what they felt about Blake Lively. All I asked them was, who is Justin Baldoni to you? And, what is it that makes you feel so comfortable around him? What is it that makes you feel the way that you feel about him? And the responses that I got were overwhelmingly positive. And because of that, I felt comfortable on my own kind of, even though it's still kind of small, even now, I felt comfortable on my own small public platform coming out and saying, Blake Lively isn't telling the truth, and I believe Justin Baldoni. Not only because of the evidence that I see in front of me, but because the people who have been in Justin's life and who have been involved in this film and who have been around all of this, what they say to me about him makes me feel very, very confident that this man is innocent. So what I've come to know about him is that he is overly apologetic. He's very reflective. He's, and I would say, based on what people have told me, people who know him and love him, almost, I don't want to say obsessive, but, like hyper critical of himself, always trying to do better and always thinking back to, did I do the right thing in this scenario? What I said earlier, was it the right thing to do? Was it the right thing to say? And so I understand why he might have apologized to Alex Sachs here, why he might have said, I try very hard not to interrupt the women in my life and I've failed. He's reflecting on his relationships with all the women in his life, not his employees, but all the women in his life. And he probably thought back to, I didn't love the way that I talked to this producer who's been my friend for a while during that meeting. And to the outside layperson, they might hear that conversation and think he didn't do anything wrong. But his introspection and his opinion and view of the world, which is very kind of feminist oriented, whether he, intentionally tries to make it that or not, he might feel that he did something wrong and he has the right to safely apologize for that without being sued for it. You know what I mean? This is ridiculous. So people will say Justin apologized for this, Justin apologized for that, or Justin said this, he said he did this, or he spoke about this in his experience. But the thing is, this is a very reflective, man who's always trying to improve his relationships to others. And he's always very critical of himself. And so he's going to sometimes apologize where it's not even appropriate. And I would hate to see him suffer for it, because we need more people in the world who care enough about how their words and actions affect other people. And they need to be able to go about their life and reflect on that and try to improve and to try to be the person they want to be without suffering for trying to be a better person. You know what I mean? And it would be one thing if he had hit someone and then was saying sorry. I would say, well, you hit someone, you need to suffer the consequences of that. But that's not what happened. He allegedly raised his voice. Not only is that not sexual harassment, it's something that happens a lot in the industry and something that he obviously cares enough to try to correct. So, yeah. Lori Jane says, I over apologize. I do too, man. I mean, Justin, I think a lot of people forget that Justin is a neurodivergent person. Blake Lively tried to bring that up in her filings early on, and people who haven't followed this from the beginning may not know that, but she tried to bring up his neurodivergence in her, complaints. And it's unfortunate because you can see how his brain kind of works here and how hard he is on himself because of it. And I don't think that people should be punished because of the way that their brains are wired differently and they're constantly overthinking and overdoing it, trying to just be normal, to feel like you're doing the best you can for the people you care about. It's unfortunate. And I've said this a lot before, and especially recently when looking at these depositions, I say I also have ADHD. I also, I'm a person who was later in life diagnosed on the spectrum. And I feel like I relate to a lot of this stuff. And so it frustrates me deeply when I read things like him apologizing like this and the way people are trying to frame it in support of a woman who so clearly isn't telling the truth about what happened. So it's a very frustrating thing, but yeah. Anyways, like I said, guys, I go on a lot of tangents during these. Did you agree with Mr. Baldoni that he failed at being a safe place for others? She has no idea, she says. Do you feel like that he failed at being a safe space for you? She says, I didn't need him to be a safe space for me. Okay, fine. No, you know what? Totally fine. That's a valid way to feel. Cool. Okay. It just doesn't mean he did anything wrong. Do you agree with Mr. Baldoni that his behavior in yelling at you during the February 2023 meeting was not acceptable? She says, yes. Okay. Why? I don't yell at work colleagues, nor do I like being yelled at. They said, do you think it's inappropriate to yell at your colleagues? Well, she just said that, yes. She says, personally. Do you recall during this February 2023 call, Mr. Baldoni interrupting you? She says, I don't recall. Was it your experience on the set that Mr. Baldoni would often interrupt you when you were speaking? She says, do you say on the set? He says, in connection with the film. She says, oh, yes. He says, Mr. Baldoni often interrupted you while you were speaking? She says, sometimes. Did you observe Mr. Baldoni interrupt other women in connection with the film? She says, I can't recall. Okay. Let me make sure this is the same. Nope, they cut it off here again. Okay, so just commenting on this part right here. Did he interrupt you on the set when you were speaking? So some people will attribute this to like some sort of accusations of mansplaining. First of all, mansplaining, not sexual harassment. It's not a crime. It's not even a civil offense. Mansplaining is very subjective. And Justin, like I said, is someone who's very hard on himself. So if he ever accidentally interrupts someone because of his ADHD thoughts, is going to later go back and think, oh shit, maybe I was mansplaining. Maybe I interrupted and I shouldn't have. And he's going to apologize for it. So it doesn't make him a bad person or guilty of anything. It just means that's his personality type. Okay. And so did Mr. Baldoni interrupt you while you were speaking? The thing is, and we'll get to this later in the deposition, Alex Sachs said that she felt she could be the sole producer, the main producer, and she didn't need Jamie Heath around, and she was upset about that. So she clearly wanted more power and control over this film set. And when Justin Baldoni interrupts her, of course she's going to be upset. You know what I mean? So Justin Baldoni, the director, her boss, has a right to interrupt her if she's doing more than she's supposed to do. And a lot of the issues here with the women on set, who Alex Sachs will mention later on this deposition, and Alex Sachs herself, is they didn't respect the boundaries of their role. We saw it with Blake Lively. We're going to see it with Alex Sachs, the way she describes it. And we're going to see it with the other women that Alex Sachs describes. So it's a boundary issue. It's not a mansplaining issue. And even if it were mansplaining, that's not a crime. It's just a personality type you don't like and you don't want to be around. Okay, I'm not saying there are no issues in our society with mansplaining, right? I'm saying that it's not something that belongs clogging up our federal court system, which people actually need, All right. Okay, towards the end of that paragraph, Mr. Baldoni writes, and of course they cut it off right there. Okay. Here we skip a few pages of the transcript, and it says, the other times I recall were usually in a group meetings when other women were present, but I never saw him directly mansplain to one woman or a group of women. It was more a big conversation with a group at a production meeting or something. So you don't even remember the mansplaining? Did you observe Mr. Baldoni yell at anyone else in connection with the film other than you? Not that I can recall. Did Mr. Baldoni yell at you more than once in connection with the film? She says, yes. How many times would you estimate that Mr. Baldoni yelled at you? She says, I believe it was 3. So she remembers 3 times. It was so significant that she remembers there were 3 times, 3 occasions on which he yelled at her on set. And we don't know what yelling means, right? Yelling could just be like lightly raising your voice. Like, I'm kind of yelling right now because I'm talking louder than I was a minute ago. You know what I mean? So like, we don't know what yelling means to her or anyone else. So she says, I believe it was 3. Would that be 2 times in addition to this February 2023 meeting? She says, I believe so. What are the other 2 incidents that you recall Mr. Baldoni yelling at you? One other was also on, as I believe the other time was on a Zoom. It was a notes Zoom. I don't remember the details beyond that. My God. And then on a follow-up Zoom, he apologized to me in front of the entire group for doing so on the previous Zoom. He apologized. Now I'm yelling. Oh my God, that is so terrible misbehavior. My God. This is ridiculous. Give me a break from this nut house real quick, just to say thank you to April Love for the $5. We love you, Lauren. You're doing good work and doing right by good people. Right fighters are rare. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I do my best. Some people don't like it. Some people do. I just am trying every day to do a little bit better about handling the people who don't. So thank you for the $2. Don't fuck with justice. Mandatory. See you next Tuesday. Super chat. Thanks very much. I appreciate that. Yeah, if this goes to trial, I will be there the whole time if possible. I'm going to do my best. I've already looked into like short-term rentals in New York, and it would not be cheap. It would be pretty bad. So after the judge rules on summary judgment motions, when I have to make a decision about whether or not I'm going to attend this trial and like what I'm going to do, I might like crowdfund for the first time so that I can have a place to stay for the whole month. But we'll see. We'll see when we get there. But I'm going to go and try to just make sure somebody's there to, have some continuity about what's going on in the courtroom and what happens. So, yeah. So what I'm going to do now, I think, is turn off these lights, like I said I was going to do earlier, just so I can give my my eyes a break, because it's the stuff I have behind the monitor is like so bright shining on me. But we'll keep reading. So give me 1 second to drink some of this water, and we'll keep going. Okay, that is much easier on my eyes. All right. Then maybe I'll turn the face cam back on in a little bit if it's, it's been a while. So, okay. So she says the other incident was also on Zoom. Okay. You mentioned a note Zoom. What is that? She says where we would get on a Zoom and have a meeting about the latest draft and talk about whatever creative notes we all had. Okay. So during a meeting to discuss notes of the draft, on the draft of the script, Mr. Baldoni yelled at you. She says, yes. Do you recall what he yelled at you? I think that what he yelled at you about is what they're trying to say. She says, I don't. Of course not, because she doesn't remember anything, apparently. Do you recall the topic that was being discussed at the time he yelled at you? I don't. Do you recall who else was present during the Zoom when he yelled at you on the Zoom with respect to discussing notes about the current draft of the scripts? She says, I believe Angie, Jamie, and possibly Kalof. All right. Is that Andrew Kalof? Yes. Roughly when do you recall the notes Zoom occurring? She said it was January 2023. Do you recall the general topic of discussion? She says, just the script. Do you recall Mr. Baldoni also... Man, I hate this guy, dude. The lawyer. I'm pretty sure it's Gottlieb, but I'm not 100% positive here. Okay. So this is what I'm saying about the questions that are kind of leading to these statements that are very favorable to Blake, but also at the same time, she can't just fabricate stuff. So she keeps saying, I don't remember. This is so dumb. Okay. Gottlieb, the lawyer, says, do you recall Mr. Baldoni also mansplaining to you during that note Zoom in January? She says, I don't recall. Okay. Oh, and maybe it was Stephanie Roser who was doing this, not Gottlieb. I could be wrong. Yeah, so maybe it is Stephanie Roser. Okay, I was wrong about that. My bad. Do you recall whether he interrupted you during that notes Zoom? I don't recall. You mentioned that there was a third incident. Okay, and when was that? She says that was on the set towards the end of first round of shooting. Would that have been roughly June 2023? She says, I believe so. What do you recall about the meeting on set with Mr. Baldoni in which he yelled at you? Okay. So now she remembers something, which is nice, I guess. She says, we were shooting at the Root location. And if you guys didn't watch the movie, I unfortunately watched it twice. If you didn't watch the movie, Root is this restaurant which is owned by the competing love interest of Blake Lively's character. So we were shooting at the Root location, and this is important for a reason, but I'll talk to you guys about that when I get to the end of these paragraphs. We were shooting at the Root location. It was a very stressful day of shooting because we had a lot of work to do in a short amount of time. He came up behind the monitor where I was sitting. Jamie and Angie were behind me, and he came up to me and asked how I thought the scene was going and if he was getting it, which I thought he did, and also expressed that I didn't believe that he needed more coverage. And then he yelled at me and said that, I don't remember exactly, but something to the effect of, I actually don't remember exactly what he said. But he yelled something and then slammed his hands on the director's chair next to me and walked away. Girl, what the fuck? She's like, oh, no, wait, I don't remember. Oh, actually, I don't remember. My God. And then I turned around and looked at Amy, Angie, and Jamie and said that if he did that, something like that to me one more time, that I was going to walk off the movie. Okay. So, you know what? If he did yell at her, then, valid for her to feel that way, because I think we've all had seconds of time or minutes of time where we've like, my boss just said something to me that made me feel upset. And we were so frustrated that you might say something like, I'm going to quit my job. You know what I mean? But we all know that that's not rational in those moments. Like, feelings like that and those heated moments, they subside sometimes pretty quickly, and she obviously didn't walk off the set. So I mean, like, I've had situations where my boss said something to me that I didn't like, or used a tone I didn't like, or even an octave of his voice I didn't like, or a level of sound I didn't like. And the thing is, I feel like most people who work regular jobs have felt that way at some time or another. So I'm saying her feelings were valid to the extent that she was yelled at by her boss. And I'm saying, if this is all true, which is a big if this was all true, she was valid in her feelings of being yelled at by her boss, and she might have felt like she wanted to quit her job at that second. But her saying that in a snap moment where she was mad doesn't mean that the set was hostile to all women the whole time. You know what I mean? Directors yell on set. We know this. Even if you don't work in the industry, we know this. And so I think that this is a little bit ridiculous. And also, it's not sexual harassment. It's not gender-based, right? It's not a gender-based, uncomfortable set for women. This is ridiculous. And even if he did yell at her, I'm sure he, cried about it and apologized profusely shortly afterwards. So, and that's because that's the kind of guy Justin is. He feels things very deeply, and he's very, conscious of how he makes other people feel. And he would have probably apologized quickly after that. But what I want to go back to what she was saying about shooting at the Root location. So if you guys haven't watched the film, like I said earlier, Root is the restaurant owned by the competing love interest for Blake Lively's character. And in this scene at Root, there was a fight scene. And Justin's character and Brandon Sklenar's character were screaming at each other. They were having a fist fight, and all this crazy heightened emotion stuff was going on. And so I'm saying it might be very hard for an actor who's going through that and trying their best to frustrate themselves to the point they can get a scene that looks like they were genuinely upset. They have to work themselves up and get ready for a pretend fist fight to the point where they're like hitting the walls and stuff. Like, he, may have been in an emotional state where he was really frustrated and yelling and shouting because that was part of his job and he was supposed to do that. So then he comes up to the monitor real quick and was like, do you think I'm getting this or not? Because he feels frustrated with how it's going. And then when she says something that he might not like, he might have yelled. He might have snapped. I mean, he's not an infallible, perfect person. It's possible that he did. But in that moment, with that heightened emotions and the fact that actors in those kinds of scenes have to stick with that emotion for however long it takes them to shoot the scene successfully, I think that you can give a little grace to somebody who may have snapped in response to something that frustrated them in that moment. So, And that's when he supposedly slammed his hands. So this is why I say to people, I know that people aren't interested in watching the film because of what happened, but it's important to have that context and what was going on in that scene that she's describing. So that's why I watched it myself. And then I watched it once more with somebody who just wanted to see the movie. So, there was a lot going on there that it's really important to understand the context of the scenes, the context of the interactions that the cast and crew might have been having in that moment, because they're describing something that on its face might sound, like he's a shitty guy who just screams at people. But when you really have the context of what was going on in the film and what they were doing in their job that day, it's kind of, you want to give them a little grace. Like, none of us are perfect. And if your job is to fill yourself with rage so that you can make the best movie you could possibly make, then yeah, you might mess up a little bit and shout at somebody. And I don't think that makes you a bad person. And it definitely doesn't make you a sexual harasser. So, all right. Lauren took one for the team. No way I could watch that movie twice. Well, I just watched it the once. But then somebody that I was talking to really wanted to watch the movie, so I watched it with them. It wasn't any better the second time, I will tell you, because I knew more about the behavior from Blake Lively on the set, and I was like, oh no, watching this in retrospect is, it doesn't feel good. But I didn't think the first time around when I watched it that it was terrible. I thought it was a decent movie. I thought the rooftop scene, my first impression was that the rooftop scene in the beginning of the film, the one that Ryan Reynolds rewrote and Blake Lively had to rewrite, I thought that the rooftop scene was cringy. I'll say that. So my first impression out of the gate when I saw that scene, I was like, if a guy said that to me or my sister or anyone else, we would all run. Like, you know what I mean? I was like, why did they write this dialogue? But then some people have come forward and said, I read the book, Lauren, and that's just how the guy talked in the book. So, there's a little bit of maybe Blake and Ryan fucked that up, and there's a little bit of maybe that's just how Colleen wrote it, and it's just gross. But, it is what it is. So, okay. So we got the slamming chair thing. And I turned around and looked at Jamie and Angie and said I would walk off. Okay. Why did you feel like you would walk off the movie if he behaved in that manner again? She says, it was the first time I felt physically intimidated. Okay. Why did you feel physically intimidated during that interaction with Mr. Baldoni? She says, because he slammed his hands on a chair right next to me while yelling at me and saying my name. That's the one thing I remember is he said Alex. So you don't remember anything else, but you remember him saying Alex. I mean, I guess that's her name. So I want to play devil's advocate and be like, well, you would know if somebody shouted your name at you. But like at the same time, it's like she doesn't remember so many important things, So this is kind of crazy. He yelled Alex and then slammed his hands on the chair. Yes. Can you describe for me where you were when that happened? I know you mentioned that you were filming a root scene. What did that look like? We were in a restaurant, and the front of the restaurant is where we were filming. And then there was sort of a divider on the restaurant, and Village was behind the divider towards the back of the restaurant. And that's where I was sitting in one of the first chairs closest to the monitor of the Village. Okay. So you were sitting at the Village. Who, or was anyone who was around you? They said Angie and Jamie were sitting in two chairs behind me. Was anyone else there? There was probably lots of crew milling around, but no one I can remember specifically. Okay. The crew would have been milling around the Village and also the area where the actual filming was taking place in front of the restaurant. She says correct, but also bringing either equipment or props back and forth. Okay. The question here says, did you say that what prompted Mr. Baldoni to yell your name and slam his hands down on a chair was that you gave him a note that you didn't think he needed more coverage of the scene? She says, yeah, I said I didn't think he needed more coverage of the scene, and I think he wanted to shoot more coverage of the scene. What do you mean when you say coverage of the scene? She says coverage of the scene is shooting a scene from various different angles. The question is, so your impression was that Mr. Baldoni wanted to shoot the scene from more angles? She says correct. And you didn't think that was necessary. Well, it sounds like he was asking for more feedback than that. It sounds like he was asking if he got it, as if he did a good job. So that's, I don't know if her interpretation of this is correct or not, but this is her recollection. So it is what it is. Okay. You didn't think that was necessary, she says correct. And simply noting to him that you didn't think he needed the scene from additional angles prompted Mr. Baldoni to yell and slam a chair. She says, I was answering his question, so yes. Okay. So you answered a question that he asked you, and he responded by yelling at you and slamming a chair on the ground. Wait, so now he's slamming it on the ground. Now he's slamming it on the ground. This is a little bit different, guys. Slamming his hands on the chair, and now she's saying he slammed it on the ground. Which one is it? And you were physically intimidated by that? She says, yes. Was there any other physical moments that Mr. Baldoni was making, movements, that he was making? Was he getting big, for example? Was he approaching you? She says, not that I can recall. Okay. So your issue is that he had a fist fight with a chair? I mean, what are we talking about here? Do you feel that was appropriate behavior for your boss? She says, no. And Mr. Baldoni yelled at you and slammed the chair. It sounds like in front of several other people. Is that right? She says, yes. In front of Miss Janetti, Mr. Heath, as well as multiple crew members. She says, from what I remember. How many crew members? I have no idea. Would it be more than 10? I don't think so. Somewhere between 5 and 10. I don't think this fucking matters. Was Mr. Baldoni in the scene that prompted him to yell at you? She says, yes. Was it your impression that he wanted more coverage of himself in the scene? She says, not necessarily. What do you mean? What? Did Mr. Baldoni ever explain to you why he yelled at you? She says, no. Did he apologize? I don't remember. So you remember the other apologies, but you don't remember this one? Uh-huh. Okay. So it either would have been Mr. Baldoni's behavior in yelling at you either would have occurred at the time of filming the scene in which his character meets Lily's mother, or the scene in which Mr. Baldoni's character gets in fight with Atlas. The fight with Atlas. Correct. Am I correct that production on the film was split into 2 phases? One before the Hollywood strikes and one after? She says correct. During roughly what time period did the first phase of production take place? May and June of 2023. And during what time frame did the second phase of production take place? We don't need to know all this because we know all this already. Blah, blah, blah. During the first phase of production, would you describe the set as well organized? She says no, because it was not being well run and managed. And mind you, this is the woman who wants to be running the film as the sole producer, the main producer, and she's upset that Jamie Heath was brought on as one of the producers. And so when she said it wasn't being well run, not only is that subjective, but we also have to consider her feelings about not getting what she wanted as far as her role in production. So give me 1 second here. I'm going to take a sip of water. Okay. I'm going to try turning the screen back on and see if I get a headache or not. But yeah, so we'll read the rest of this. Sorry, guys. When I'm by myself like this and I'm reading a lot and talking a lot, I need a 30 to 45 second break sometimes. So let's see. Somebody made a good comment that I want to pull up before I continue here. If I can find it. Wasn't it? Where is it? There it is. SS Webb says, I keep saying if JB removed himself, these women would have attacked each other. And I think that's kind of an interesting thing to think about. Because the very clear catalyst for these issues was, they wanted, Hall wanted to be a director. They said no. Sachs wanted to be the main producer. They said no. Blake Lively wanted to direct, act, produce, and be the costume designer, and they said no. Right? So these are all people who were told no by men, and they didn't like it. And Colleen Hoover wanted a little more influence over how things went, and they said no. So all of these women who ended up complaining, they all wanted something and weren't given it. And so it's kind of suspicious to me that they then suddenly had a problem. But yeah. Okay, let's see. Not to mention their problems are not harassment by any sense of the word. So thanks for fucking it up for people who really need the protections of the system, I guess. Okay. The set was not being well run or managed during the first phase of production by Mr. Baldoni. She says, it wasn't just Mr. Baldoni. We started to shoot with a very weak first AD. Our production team was very tiny and overwhelmed, and then we had Wayfair as the decision-making studio, who was also very green. She says, who was the very weak first AD that you mentioned? Julie Bloom. Why did you believe Miss Bloom to be very weak? She had come from, more recently, the television world, which does not require ADs unless you're working on the pilot to really construct the framework for how a production is going to run. And so doing this film, from my memory, she had not done one in a while, and we just were not set up for success as an operation. Okay. How would you generally expect a first AD on a film set to, let me rephrase, what are your expectations for how a first AD on a film set performs? That they are hyper-communicative, in constant communication with all departments, understanding the timeline of any given day, in addition to the prep work to get to that given day. They're also in lockstep with the director and the DP on what the shot list is for the entire day. They also should have a really acute understanding of the hair and makeup timings and how the actors are going to be operating on set in terms of needing rehearsal, not needing rehearsal, how long it takes for their hair, makeup, and costumes to be done. They are the clock of the day. Okay. And I'll be honest, I don't know much about what an assistant director does, so I can't really comment too much on that. I don't know. Anyone else who's worked in the industry who's watching this, maybe you can comment in the chat here, but I don't know much about that. So, okay. In your view, did Miss Bloom meet those expectations for how a first AD on film set should perform? She says, no, I think she tried very hard, but was not able to wrap her head around the entire machine. Okay. Did you recommend terminating Miss Bloom as first AD on the film? She says, I was not the first to recommend it, but ultimately, yes. So this is why people are saying, what about all these women that Blake Lively got fired? And, I don't know what an AD is supposed to do, and I don't know about Alex Sachs's assessment of her job. I don't know if it's accurate or not. I couldn't really say because I don't have that information, but there is a little bit of suspicion because there were some women on set who Blake Lively got, chucked to the wind. And what do they have to say about it? What do they have to say? Especially because they were there in the first phase of filming. What do they have to say about the environment? It's a little sus. Okay. So she was saying she did support terminating Miss Bloom. Okay. What were your impressions, if any, of how Mr. Baldoni performed his responsibilities as a director during phase 1? I think he was deeply overwhelmed and, despite a long prep, very unprepared on a daily basis for a lot of reasons. Okay. The lawyer says, fair to say, you do not find him to be an effective director during phase 1. She says, not necessarily. There's a lot of facets being marked. And then, of course, I'm like, wait, that doesn't make sense. No, they skip pages again. Not necessarily. There's a lot of facets. And, of course, they skip ahead 7 pages. So, whatever. Okay. So there's something here that they don't want Mr. Heath to see. It says, take a quick look at those. Exhibits 6 and 7 is marked attorney's eyes only. So I will ask that Mr. Heath not be given a copy and that we ask questions, he leave the room. So Jamie and Justin probably sat for some of these depositions, as a defendant has a right to do. They probably sat there and listened to some of this. So they're asking that Jamie leave the room because this is attorney's eyes only. Okay. Ms. Sachs, I will direct your attention to Exhibit 6. Okay, this appears to be a text chain between you and Ms. Neidigh, indicated as home. What does that mean? Do you recognize this as a text chain between you and Ms. Neidigh? Would you please direct your attention to Exhibit 7, a text chain between you and Ms. Lively? Okay. Here we go. Okay, okay, here we go. Let me make sure this is continuous. So they skipped a page there, but I don't know how much was really on it. Do you recall the brunch with Jenny? Is that Jenny Slate? Do you recall having brunch with Jenny Slate on May 29th or around that time? I do. Oh, so you remember that? Okay. And tell me about that brunch. So keep in mind all the stuff she's responded, I don't remember to, but she conveniently remembers all of this stuff. Jenny and I had a meal prior to this one. So I went into it thinking that it was a friendly brunch, which it was to a degree. But during it, she brought up some concerns that she was having on the movie, which was the first time I was hearing about them. Okay. I don't remember exact language that was used, but there were a few concerns. One was that in a scene, I believe the week prior, Justin had commented on her physical appearance, which made her uncomfortable. So we know that to be the bar scene where he said the outfits, like the wardrobe, looked sexy. And she felt uncomfortable with him using that word. Okay, sure. First of all, I think that is a little over the top. If the women on set, Blake Lively especially, who spearheaded she wants her wardrobe to look sexy, her hats and her shoes and all that, wants it to look sexy, and then he says the outfit looks sexy. I don't think that's a thing of really sexualizing the woman. You know what I mean? So I don't know about that, but that is what it is. If you feel uncomfortable with the director saying sexy about something you're wearing, and you raise that concern, just again, playing kind of a neutral advocate here, I think it's okay to raise that concern, and it should stop there. And if it stops after that, okay, that's how it should be. But it's not like it, was pervasive beyond that to the point where he was saying it and saying it and saying it after she didn't want him to say it anymore. You know what I mean? So when Blake and Jenny are saying they want the sexy wardrobe and stuff, and he's like, "Oh, that looks sexy" or whatever to the outfit for the character, you have a hard time convincing me that this is the kind of pervasive sexual harassment that needs to be addressed by our federal court system. One comment that an outfit was sexy, you know what I mean? So, and like I said, valid complaint. If you feel uncomfortable with it, raise the concern, and then as long as it gets nipped in the bud, you continue on with your work, because that's not sexual harassment, right? That's oh shit, that made me uncomfortable. I didn't like that, so I'm asking you to stop. They stopped. Now you move on. Okay. That an initial creative Zoom meeting between Justin, Blake, and Jenny and Blake only found out at the very end of the Zoom that Justin had been recording the whole time. So this is where you really got to call bullshit, because I use Zoom every single day, for work. And not this, but my day job. And Zoom notifies you when you're being recorded. There's a pop-up that you have to click out of that notifies you that you're being recorded. So it's not like you could accidentally not know you were being recorded. This is bullshit. So whatever she said to Alex Sachs was not entirely truthful. And you can see the entire time, even after you click out of the pop-up, there's the recording thing there. You're being recorded, So it's not like she was secretly being recorded and didn't realize it, yet that's how they're characterizing it. So that's one of many things that makes me realize these women are not being truthful. Because any average Jane who has a 9-to-5 job could tell you that a Zoom call being recorded notifies you that it's being recorded. So you messed up with that one. One sec here. Okay. All right, so there was a Zoom thing, she alleges, and that made both Blake and Jenny, from Jenny's point of view, feel very uncomfortable. There was a mention of some kind of comments that Jamie had made to Jenny. This is the worst part, I think. Subjectively speaking, this is my feeling about this. This is the worst part. There was a mention of some kind of comments that Jamie had made to Jenny regarding how generous they had been with her housing allowance, and that it was important for them to take care of new mothers, and that made her uncomfortable. And then there was a lot of other conversation, non-specific, but that she was uncomfortable in both of their presences and really would prefer to never see Jamie again. Knowing that Justin was a director and co-star, she would have to. So we've all had people that we have to work with that we would prefer to never see again. That doesn't mean that we should sue them for harassment. There's just people we don't like, we don't get along with, we don't like their style, we don't agree with their views. We all have people that we would rather not see again, but we have to because we have to work with them. It's not a reason to fire anyone, right? It's just a personal preference. In the workplace, you just kind of have to learn how to deal with people you might butt heads with in your personal life. So this comment that Jamie made to Jenny regarding how generous they had been with her housing allowance. Jenny Slate brought up to Jamie Heath that she felt unsafe and uncomfortable in the apartment that she had, and she was a new mother. And so Jamie Heath said to her that they were going to help her out and shell out the money to get her to a place where she felt safe and comfortable because they value the family and they value, mothers and their babies feeling safe. And that made her feel uncomfortable. So she's like, hey, she goes to these people and she says, hey, I feel like the place that I'm living in, I feel really unsafe. I feel uncomfortable there. I think that I have some problems. And, she has a newborn, or not even a newborn, but a baby, you know what I mean? Like a relatively new kid. And they say, you know what? It's really important to us to take care of, families and new mothers, and you're working for us and we want to help you out. So we're going to give you an allowance to get a different place in an area of town that feels safer for you and your child. And she complained about that. Wow. Wow. Okay. That's the craziest thing I've ever heard. Like, so do you know how hard it is for new mothers to get taken care of by their employers in America? Extremely. Okay? There are hundreds of thousands of women struggling because they don't even get any maternity leave from their jobs. They risk losing their income and the homes they need to raise their babies in. And this woman is like, well, I asked for something and they gave it to me because I'm a new mom. And she thinks that they should be demonized for that. What is wrong with you? Jenny Slate's the fucking worst. I'm sorry. I don't like her at all. I mean, I know that she got some backlash as well, and Blake Lively tried to say in her response to the motion for summary judgment that multiple women were getting backlash, not just Blake because of the Wayfair parties and they're, trying to ruin them. No, Jenny Slate got backlash because Jenny Slate ran her mouth on a podcast and announced to everyone that she hit her famous boyfriend, Chris Evans, who played Captain America. What's wrong with you? Jesus. Like, this is the most unreasonable person I've ever heard of. And Blake sucks, but this is the most unreasonable thing I've heard possibly in this entire thing. I mean, it's up there with the thing about the word birthed being sexual. That might be worse, but it's in the top two. So this is insane. All right. Miss Slate says that she never wanted to see Mr. Heath again. Correct. And it's your impression that Miss Slate knew that she would have to see Mr. Baldoni because he was the director, but perhaps she didn't want to see him either. Okay, well, I don't want to see your mom, but she's, you know what? I'm sorry. I'm not going to finish that. I was about to get really petty, and I'm not going to do that. I can't speak to that, but that was my assumption. You said a lot there, so I want to break it down a little. You mentioned that Miss Slate raised... Okay, Miss Slate raised... And then this goes from 102 to 103. Okay, you testified that Miss Slate raised during your brunch in May that Mr. Baldoni had commented on her physical appearance, which made her uncomfortable. Okay, sure. And do you recall if Miss Slate told you whether that happened while a scene was being filmed, while they were on set, or at some other time? Okay. She says, do you mean... No, that's Ellen Garofalo. Hold on. Okay, so they want to know where Miss Slate was when Mr. Baldoni commented on her appearance. Do you recall if she told you? Alex, unsurprisingly, says, I don't remember. It was on set in costume prior to filming. We know, we've seen it, so we know. where that was. Okay. We were not filming. Right. So they were not filming the scene. I mean, there's a video of it because the camera was still rolling, but they weren't actually filming the scene. They weren't acting at the time. So did Miss Slate tell you what the comment about her appearance was? It was, I don't recall if it was that, I don't recall again, if it was that he called her hot or sexy, and I don't recall if it was once or twice. The first time would have been in the flower shop when she was wearing an all-leather jumpsuit, and the second would have been in the karaoke scene. I don't remember what she was wearing that day, and I don't remember which comment was attributed to which. Okay, but you recall Miss Slate informing you that Mr. Baldoni had called her hot and sexy. Jesus. Okay, and you don't recall the specific... I don't. Of course she doesn't recall. You don't recall what she was wearing at the time. I don't. Did Miss Slate share with you during that brunch that she felt Mr. Baldoni's comment that she was hot or sexy was directed to her personally? I'm not sure I understand the question. Okay. Did Miss Slate... I'm not sure I understand the question either. Did Miss Slate share with you during brunch that she felt Mr. Baldoni commenting that she was hot or sexy was directed at her rather than her character? She didn't specify. That's kind of important. Did you have an understanding one way or another? I didn't. Okay. Did Miss Slate also share with you that Mr. Baldoni had commented on Miss Lively's appearance in a similar manner? Answer, she would not give me specifics about what Blake was experiencing, but I believe had encouraged Blake to speak to me directly, and then I reach out to Blake. Okay. Did Miss Slate suggest to you that she had encouraged Blake to reach out to you about her own concerns with Mr. Baldoni and Heath? I believe she did. Do you recall how she suggested that? I don't. Do you recall Miss Slate suggesting somehow that Miss Lively had also had some uncomfortable experiences with Baldoni or Heath? Yes. And that was in the May 29th brunch you had with her. Okay. You also mentioned that Miss Slate raised concerns about comments by Mr. Heath with regard to her housing situation. What do you recall about Mr. Heath's comments regarding her situation? All I remember, and I don't even know that I knew the details of what was happening at the time because production and Wayfair were handling it vis-a-vis the contract. Those were the kinds of conversations that I wasn't part of on this film. But it was something to the effect of, we gave you more than maybe we normally would have because we prioritize women with families and children because... And what do you know? They cut it off. That's a little telling, don't you think? One sec here, guys. All right, so we're like an hour and a half in, and I've got, let's see, 50 pages to go. So I do have to take a quick bathroom break. So what I'm going to do while I do that, and I'm going to go as fast as I can so you guys aren't just sitting here, but I want to show you guys something that I didn't have as many viewers as I do now when I did this. I have a project here that I worked on with a lot of viewers before I was subpoenaed and I got too busy to finish. I have a project here that I worked on with other viewers who support Justin and why they believe him. And I'm going to show you one of those videos while I just run really quickly to the bathroom. And I apologize for having to leave. But like I said, I'm alone right now, and usually I have someone else to help me read, and I just don't right now. So let me find this for you. I'm going to share this tab instead real quick. Oh, wait, you know what? Hold on. Here it is. So I got this project that I worked on. Let me see. Let me make sure this is not the one with the yeah. Okay. This one is like 5 minutes. Tonight I have something special that I wanted to share with you. As most of you who watch my channel regularly know, I've been collecting tributes and voice clips in support of Justin Baldoni and the Wayfarer as long as you can hear it
during this trying time. Most of those voices, most of those tributes are coming from survivors of abuse. One of our community members sent me a performance by her daughter, and this is a raw performance. I wanted to put together that performance with some of the voices of this community because I felt like it was a really powerful thing not just to show support for Justin Baldoni, but for other survivors who have not yet been able to share their voice or escape their situation. We don't need a woman who has been much less than 100% honest to stand up and declare herself a champion for women and girls' safety. We don't need that because if you're hearing this, you know we have each other. And let this serve as a reminder that it can still end with us.
Say I wanna feel helpless if that's true. I told you.
Okay, good thing I checked because this one, well, I love this one because one of our viewers' daughters sang this song as a background. I can't use this one or YouTube will strike it. So I learned that the hard way, unfortunately, because it's a cover of a song by NF and he has the copyright, of course. So let me play this one for you instead. Hang on.
Last night on Late Night with Seth Meyers, Blake Lively gave a speech that some might call heroic. But those who don't know the circumstances behind this story won't see the self-serving motivations for what she said and why so many others feel bothered by it. To put it plainly, many people believe Blake Lively is exploiting a false Me Too claim, and they have good reason to believe that. And when she uses all of her power, influence, and platform to give self-serving speeches like this one, it's harmful to those who have been through abuse and feel they won't be believed. It's hard to see this happening when they might actually need the system to protect them, because at least some of her claims have now been seen to have been exaggerated or didn't happen the way that she said they happened. And any amount of dishonesty on this very sensitive subject, especially when under such public scrutiny, can affect the way others perceive people who come forward. I haven't seen anything of the sort present what happened, and that gets caught on film. That makes it harder and scarier for people to speak up. Not only that, but people who speak up against this and have valid reasons to be upset are some of the same women who are being berated by people online for not believing Blake Lively. They're being told what misogynistic pieces of shit they are by the Believe All Women and Treat Women Better crowd. You have female journalists trying to reduce people to mommy sleuths and to somehow disparage women who have taken a different path or have a different opinion than they do.
I also acknowledge that many people don't have the opportunity to speak. So I do feel fortunate that I've been able to. And it's the women who have had the ability to use their voice that's kept me strong and you know, helped me in my belief in my fight for the world to be safer for women and girls. It's a pretty simple thing.
There's really nothing simple about these mental gymnastics. If Blake Lively wanted to fight to make the world a safer place for women and girls, she would have been doing that. She would have been doing that before she even touched It Ends With Us. She would have been doing it while promoting that film, and she would have been doing it since. But I haven't seen anything of the sort until this press run with the Time 100 Gala and now Late Night with Seth Meyers. While I hate what Blake Lively has done, I'm not here to lay out for you why I believe what I believe. Right now, I'm here to say there's another person on the other side of this, and that person, too, deserves to have people speak up and say, I believe you. I believe those who have been close to him, who have worked with him, who were working on that project that are still afraid to speak out. I believe in what I see with my own two eyes when I read every court document from both sides and watch the raw footage that came out. And yes, as a survivor of abuse, I believe Justin Baldoni, and I'm not the only one.
I was a victim of on-set sexual harassment. I am a survivor of casting couch sexual assault, and I support Justin Baldoni.
I'm a therapist, and I'm also a survivor of narcissistic abuse.
I am a legal assistant.
I am a veteran.
I myself am a victim of domestic abuse. I'm a mom of 2 beautiful boys.
I'm left-wing, although I don't see how that's relevant. As someone who's experienced SH, I believe Baldoni.
This is not a fight of man versus woman. It is a fight between right and wrong.
I am a survivor of SA. I stand with Justin Baldoni and those who need the truth to be told.
And the people who lie about such an attack made it hard for survivors like me to be believed.
I was sexually abused as a child in a very high-profile case by an Australian actor called Robert Hughes. He went to prison and was recently released, and I was one of the hundreds of victims that came forward in that case. Despite that, I support Justin Baldoni because I believe that false accusers are just as big an enemy to victims as the abusers are.
I'm a survivor of IPV. I'm 37, the mother of 3, and married to a wonderful man. Whenever I see someone falsely accused of something, I look at my husband and my children and think, what if it was them?
I am a survivor of sexual abuse as a child. I also was abused emotionally and mentally, and those traumas have carried throughout my life. I've done my best to learn to live with them, but it's challenging. And I want to thank Justin Baldoni for his efforts of speaking out for the masses. I come from a generation that these were not spoken about or addressed. And now hearing him and what he's going through sickens me. So I look forward to the day that he is exonerated. And I pray that it doesn't follow him for the rest of his life. And his accusers are brought to justice.
All right, guys. Sorry about that. Like I just said, I just had to take a quick break, but I have a whole bunch of those that I did. If you want to watch them, maybe mods can link to that playlist, or I can. Hang on. Let me just put a link real quick in the chat, and then we'll go back to the deposition. Okay. So if you go to this video, it's one of the ones in the playlist, so you can always watch the rest of them on the sidebar. Anyways, back to this shit. Okay. What do you recall about Mr. Heath's comments? Why do I have this in? What do you recall about Mr. Heath's comments regarding Miss Slade's housing situation? All I remember, and I don't even know that I knew the details, okay, is what was happening at the time because production and Wayfair were handling vis-a-vis the contract. So we've been through this. I won't go through that too much, but let's see. They did skip a page there, which I think is important, right? Hang on, let me move myself so that you guys can see this better. Okay, I think everyone should be able to read along now. Okay. And just real quick, I know people are saying, are you so glad these people wanted to speak out? These are incredible. You know, people are saying that they like that stuff. So that's the kind of stuff that I was doing before I got subpoenaed. Why do you think I got subpoenaed? It's not because I was part of a smear campaign. It's because I was a part of a group of people who had actual logical reasoning for believing that Blake Lively was a liar and had the voice to speak out against that while she was on talk shows saying that she was a champion for women. So it's no coincidence that that is exactly what I was doing at the time. Yeah. All right. Anyways, Elisa Olaya 22, thank you very much for the $10. This is why I'm so passionate about this case. We are real victims and BL has turned into a joke. She has. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. Anyways, so we skipped a page there, but it says, are you aware that in some states it is illegal to record people without their content? I think it means consent, right? And would you be okay with your boss recording a conversation with you without informing you in advance? She says no. Okay. I believe you testified that there were other non-specific conversations that Miss Slate raised she was uncomfortable with. Okay. Do you recall that? I think I just covered all of them. I don't remember any further specifics. If you look back to Exhibit 6, okay, at 11:23, you sent a text to Gianetti that said, yes, very bad. I think we need to replace our director and Jamie should not be on set. Okay. So that is Alex Sachs' response in the immediate aftermath of being complained to by one of the important actors in the film, who was also relaying stuff at the direction, as she said, at the direction of Blake Lively, or they were working together to talk to her and said, you should talk to Alex. You know, one of them said that to the other. There's, you know, some level of anxiety that I would also feel if I were in Alex Sachs' shoes there, and with none of the other stuff that was going on in the background, I would also feel anxious about that. And I might say something crazy like that, like we need to fire Justin and Jamie, right? I might say something like that. In like an emotional reaction to what I just found out, because there's been many times in my life, and this is what I've tried to draw on some personal experience to play almost not even devil's advocate sometimes, which is like a neutral advocate sometimes, to kind of play into like, I can see the other side of this, right? And the other side of this for me right now without reading the rest of the deposition, because my opinion here is going to change, I guarantee you, because I've seen the rest. But my initial reaction was, I can kind of see why she might have reacted that way. I can kind of see why she might have said that. I can see why she might have panicked and out of an emotional, state of mind said, we have to fire these people. Oh my God, it's so bad. You know what I mean? Because I've emotionally reacted to things before and said things that I later learned were like maybe a little bit over the top, but let's keep going here. Oh, hey, Julia, what's up? How you doing? Okay. You felt that what Miss Slate had shared with you about Mr. Heath and Mr. Baldoni's behavior was very bad. Yes. And did you think because of what Miss Slate shared with you that Justin should be replaced as director on the film? Yes. Why? Because his actors were uncomfortable in his presence. Okay, but we should talk about why, right? We should talk about why and what actually happened there before we decide to fire the director. So we're not going to do that right away, huh? Okay. And in your view, it's important that actors be comfortable around the director. Yes, and it's important that people be comfortable in their workplace. Why did you think Jamie should not be on set? Okay, so before I get to this next part, which is one of the worst things in this deposition, and the most telling things in this deposition. So we're talking about important that people be comfortable in their workplace. Okay, and that goes both ways. So if I'm the type of person who is like friendly with my coworkers to the extent I consider them personal friends, and I would say, I don't know, have my husband tattoo their name on his perineum. Okay. If I were a person who was that comfortable with my friend, who's also, my boss, but I have more power than him because my husband's Deadpool, then, I might stop for a second and say, well, you know what? I kind of have this relationship with him where we have banter back and forth. And I muddied the waters of this professional relationship with our friendship that happened before I ever agreed to be his employee. Okay. And at that point, it's like, does the director need to be fired? Or does he need to be reminded that they're on a set where there are rules and professional standards that you can't talk to her the way that you would talk to her offset? Or, there are certain words you have to be careful of. And we have room for those kinds of mistakes, I guess. And I would be very careful to call it a mistake, but I'm trying to play a little bit of, neutral advocate, like I said here, where I'm trying to see the other side and how this might pan out. If you are, somebody who's friendly with that person, I can kind of see why it might be like, that was a mistake. I shouldn't have said that. And you could move forward knowing that you don't have the kind of relationship with that person that you thought you had, or your personal relationship and your professional relationship with that person has to be very, very separate. Okay. But we give some grace to people, right, who make those kinds of mistakes when we have muddy relationships, especially with people who say words like sexy and send you flirty texts late at night about never with teeth when you're ball busting and all kinds of crazy stuff. We give some grace to people who make those mistakes. And it's not sexual harassment for him to say her outfit was sexy or something like that made them uncomfortable. Even though they asked that their outfits look sexy, she was very concerned about the wardrobe to the point that she demanded they go well over budget to bring in her own wardrobe choices, which were a disaster, by the way. And I'm no fashion icon, like I said before. I absolutely don't give a shit about fashion or anything like that. But even I could tell Blake Lively's character looked like a mildly sophisticated bag lady. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, she looked like she was wearing like colorful paper bags, like on top of paper bags. It was very strange. She was wearing like 3 pairs of pants at one point. And I was like, who approved this? Blake Lively did, right? And she takes over the wardrobe and she's like, I want it to look sexy. And then when he says, okay, the outfit looks sexy, she's like, you're a harasser. You know what I mean? So there's there's so much conflict in my head about what what might have happened there, and I try so hard to give women the benefit of the doubt that I'm trying so hard to come up with an excuse for why they might have at one point said, I feel uncomfortable with the word sexy, but even when I try with all my might to give them the benefit of the doubt with everything that I know from reading all of this stuff over and again, you know what I mean? I can't. It's like this, you asked for this. He was like, okay, we can work on that and we can make the outfit look sexy for the character or whatever. And then he says that the outfit looks sexy for the character. And then you're like, you're a sexual harasser. Like, it's so frustrating, dude. It's so frustrating. But the standards in our, courts for what is sexual harassment are what they are for a reason. It's not just like a once-off comment that you make, right? So if you say one time, Justin Baldoni says one time to Jenny Slate or Blake Lively, the outfit looks sexy, the character's outfit looks sexy, that's not an automatic, means to sue someone for and win for sexual harassment, because people are allowed to make mistakes when we have muddy relationships like that, friendships like that in the workplace. And so if somebody says to you, I feel uncomfortable, and they continue, the other person continues that behavior of saying sexy, 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 I'm too sexy for my shirt, whatever, then that's a problem. Then that's a problem. Okay. But that's not what happened here. It's just so frustrating. I hate it so much because these people, the thing that these people have done with their accusations, which are so bizarre, and it takes me a long time to get to a place where I realize that when I really, really look at everything from every angle, the way that these people have described things and tried to weaponize things into situations of sexual harassment, it pits me against me. And I think a lot of women feel that way. A lot of women who have been through sexual harassment at work, sexual harassment in general, domestic violence, sexual abuse, sexual assault, anything like that. It pits you versus you when you have a high-profile woman come out and say all this crazy stuff about a man, about what a terrible person he was and what a sexual predator he was, and then to find out that everything she was saying was pretty much not true. It pits you against you because we have this situation where, like, I want to believe the person who's making the accusation because I've been the person who thought about making the accusation, whether I did or not. And then there's, dude, nothing you're saying makes any fucking sense. So it's like this weird, like, internal warfare she's putting on women in the public who are reading these things, especially those who don't know all the details and don't take the time to read the court's docket and only read TMZ. It's crazy, dude. The psychological warfare on women that Blake Lively has waged through this process that I just described, pitting you against yourself when you read this stuff. And then also by subpoenaing 107 content creators, almost all of whom were women, making them feel like they did something wrong by criticizing her actions. Like the psychological warfare that Blake Lively has waged on women should be studied. Like, it's crazy. It's so crazy. My God. All right, give me 1 second. All right. Let's see here. So we got to the part where she said, she thought their behavior was very bad, blah, blah, blah. He should be replaced. Why did you think Jamie should not be on set? And then here's where we get to the truth of the matter. After all the I don't knows, or I don't recall, or I'm not sure, here's where we get to the truth of the matter, right? Because she remembers this part. Because I knew that I was more than capable of running the movie, which is what she wanted in the first place, right? So she wanted Jamie off the set, not because he actually did anything wrong and not because there was any proof that he ever did anything wrong, right? But because she was capable of running the movie herself. They just weren't letting me. Bad men not letting woman have whatever she wants. That's not how jobs work, hon. You have to respect the boundaries of your job and the people around you that you're working with or under. You can't just have whatever you want all the time, babe. That's not how that works. Even if people say bad things about other people on the set, you still can't just have whatever the fuck you want because, oh, woman said Jamie bad because looked at her in her trailer after she invited him. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Woman said Jamie bad because gave her money for new apartment after she didn't feel safe in the old one. So he needs to be kicked off the set because I can do this myself. That's where I lose sympathy for Alex Sachs, even from my trying very hard to be objective perspective. That's a big yikes to me. So if he was making someone so uncomfortable, I didn't see the reason for him to be there. Do you know how problematic this is? One more time. So if he was making someone so uncomfortable, I didn't see the reason for him to be there. Honey, those of us who are in touch with reality and work the 9 to 5, we're uncomfortable all the time because we don't want to do the shit we have to do to make the money we need to pay our grocery bills. Bitch, what's wrong with you? Like, this is where I totally lose it on Alex Sachs because I've tried so hard to be independent and like not blame her. And I'm like, are you joking? He made someone so uncomfortable. Anyone can be uncomfortable for any reason. I'm uncomfortable in situations the second I walk into a room because I'm a fucking autist. It doesn't mean that anyone did anything wrong, okay? You need to get over it. There's a process for a reason. There's laws that specify, persistent and pervasive things for harassment as a reason. You can't just say anyone made you uncomfortable and then sue them into oblivion. That's ridiculous. Jesus. All right. And similar to Mr. Baldoni, did you believe that? Strike that. Okay. Did you believe that excluding Mr. Heath would make actors more comfortable? For at least Jenny, yes. Well, God bless Jenny. She's the most important one. Boyfriend beater, right? The lady who hit her boyfriend is the most important person on the set of this domestic violence related film. But God bless Jenny, I guess. They only did their best to make her feel comfortable in her home, giving her their money when they didn't have to. And that made her uncomfortable. That was literally her complaint, was that they gave her money to go to a home that made her feel safer because he said something about the sanctity of motherhood, which is a totally personal thing, by the way. Like, you're clearly at this point making a plea to Jamie Heath, the person, not Jamie Heath, your boss. Okay. Was Mr. Heath excluded from set going forward? No. Why not? I don't know. Was Mr. Baldoni replaced? No. Why not? I don't know. Other than Miss Janetti, did you raise to anyone else the idea that Mr. Baldoni should be replaced as director on the film because his actors were not comfortable with him? No. Angie told me that there was no way that would ever happen. Okay. We'll keep reading before I comment on that. Okay. So you informed Miss Janetti that actors were uncomfortable in their workplace due to Jamie and Justin's behavior, and her response was, there's no way that would ever happen. Or something to that effect. Okay. She says, yeah, that Sony's hands were tied. They had no control over That's some fucking bullshit. They had no control over the movie, and that Wayfarer would never replace themselves. I'm sorry, but in the context of the 17-point demand for return to work list, do what I say or else, that's hilarious. Okay. My God. Other than Miss Janetti, did you raise to anyone that Mr. Heath should be excluded from set because actors were uncomfortable in his presence? Probably the line producer, Andrea, but otherwise, no. Okay. Did you ever raise to Mr. Heath that Mr. Baldoni should be replaced because actors were uncomfortable with his presence on set? No, why not? Because Justin was Jamie's boss. And did you ever raise it, Justin? By the way, the only reason this is funny is because every single day she came to work, she got a call sheet that said, here's the number you need to call if you feel uncomfortable with the structure of things on set or what's going on. It's Justin and Jamie's movie. If you're uncomfortable with Justin and Jamie executing the movie with their vision, then you should fuck off. I don't know what else to say at this point. If there was actually persistent, pervasive sexual harassment that we had any evidence of, then I would be singing a different tune, right? But that's not what happened. So at this point, if you didn't like the man, you hated him to the point you were like, oh, I'll walk off set if this happens again. Walk off. Go the fuck away. Bless us all with that. Why not? You know? Okay. Did you ever raise to Justin that you felt he should be replaced as director and his actors weren't comfortable in his presence? No. Why not? Because he was my boss. Did you feel like you didn't have anyone else to raise these to? Which is what I'm saying. Like, Blake's attorneys really lead these questions, which I think people don't understand about depositions because we don't usually follow these things this closely, right? But she's saying that, you know, he was her boss, so she was not reporting, even though she had a number to a third party to call. She was like, oh my gosh, I don't remember about that, right? But then she's like, I don't have anyone else to raise it to. This is a problem. They were like, no, I didn't raise it. I had someone else to raise it to, but I didn't remember. I don't remember. You know what I mean? So I don't know why I started talking like that, but anyways. Did you feel like you didn't have anyone else to raise that to? Correct. And just to be clear, you felt that there was no other avenue other than Miss Giannetti. Well, that's a pretty big avenue to raise your concerns that actors were uncomfortable in the presence of Mr. Heath, the CEO, and Mr. Baldoni, the director of the film. Correct. Other than strongly encouraging Jamie and Justin to do an investigation, that was all. Well, I have a problem with that because she's saying she strongly encouraged them to do an investigation, but then she's also saying she never raised these things to Justin Baldoni. I never raised these things, but they never did an investigation. Well, baby girl, how the fuck were they supposed to know? All right. Did you raise to Mr. Baldoni that Mr. Heath should be removed? No. Because Mr. Baldoni, okay, so here's again the leading question. Because Mr. Baldoni was your boss and Mr. Heath was his partner? Yeah. And because Mr. Baldoni put Jamie on the movie as a producer after he had already hired me. And there we go back to the power grab. What she really wanted was to be the main producer running it by herself. And she was upset that Jamie was put on the film as a producer. Why did that impact your decision not to raise to Mr. Baldoni that Mr. Heath should be excluded from set due to the actor's discomfort with his presence? Because if Justin felt I could do the job on my own, he wouldn't have put Jamie on the movie in the first place. Why is that a good enough reason not to stand up for your fellow women on set who are reporting something like this to you? That's a little sus, don't you think? Did you encourage Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath to conduct an investigation with regard to, and then of course, it cuts off. Okay, so after you had brunch with Jenny and she raised concerns about Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath's behavior, you had a Zoom with Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath to discuss Jenny's concerns, correct? And during that Zoom, did you share with them that Miss Slate had concerns with respect to Mr. Baldoni's comments about her appearance, comments made by Mr. Heath, and other items as well? Yes. How did they react? They actually took it very well. Well, that's it. Go to hell, guys. They took it very well. Go to hell. In terms of they didn't at the time deny or get defensive about it, they just seemed to be taking it in. And that made it not as challenging of a conversation for me to be having with them, which I appreciated. So you're saying that you felt comfortable and safe to raise these issues with the other people who were employing you. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Say more about that. But no, because Blake's lawyers are asking the questions here. So of course it's going to be framed a certain way. That's fucking hilarious, though. Good God. When you suggested or recommended that an investigation be performed, how did Mr. Baldoni respond? Well, at first he profusely apologized to the chair. 1 second, guys. Okay, so I don't remember the exact words, but something to the effect of, I'm happy to do it. I should take responsibility for things I've done, that kind of language. So you're saying that Justin was receptive to your feedback and critical of himself and wanted to do better? What's wrong with you? During that Zoom call following your brunch with Miss Slate, did you also raise that Miss Lively had certain concerns about Mr. Baldoni and Heath's behavior? No, because I didn't know that for sure yet. So you just didn't bring it to their attention. And then you were like, I don't know why they didn't do anything about women feeling a certain way on set. But you, the producer, didn't bring it to them. What's wrong with you? How did Mr. Heath react to your recommendation that an investigation into his and Baldoni's behavior be conducted? He heard it and said they needed to talk about it. Okay, that's reasonable. Did you ever hear from Mr. Heath after that conversation about whether they were in fact going to conduct an investigation into his and Mr. Baldoni's conduct? Not proactively, but we obviously talked about it again. Whether it was because I brought it up, I don't remember, to kind of check in on it. And then at some point, he did let me know that they weren't going to do an investigation. Well, nobody made a complaint. Female actress complains in private to other female she's friends with isn't grounds for an investigation. If you make a complaint, that's grounds for an investigation. This is not rocket science, guys. My God. Okay. So after this initial Zoom call, where you shared Miss Slate's concerns with Mr. Baldoni and Heath, you had another follow-up, okay? It was probably just Jamie, right? And it was probably a non-specific call, I believe at that point. Okay. I believe at that point we were probably on the phone multiple times a day and was coming up in the course of various other conversations. So the follow-up discussion you recall being just with Mr. Heath. Yes, I believe so. And it was on the phone. Mr. Heath shared with you during that follow-up conversation that Wayfarer would not be investigating concerns about his behavior or Mr. Baldoni's behavior. That was the final call about it. There was, I believe, one in the middle where we were just talking about it, about the possibility of doing it again. Okay. What do you recall about the middle call? Not much. Probably just me pushing for it to happen again. Miss, I don't remember why I was yelled at. Says, not much. Probably just me pushing for it to happen again. Baby girl, your memory is shit. So why should we believe you right now, 30 minutes later? Why were you pushing for an investigation? Because I wanted the behavior to be taken seriously. And also, since I hadn't been there to see any of it, it's the way that you sort of address and handle these things and can hopefully make for a more comfortable work environment for everyone going forward. Okay, so this right here, I agree that if Jamie and Justin actually did something wrong, the way that they were being accused of, then that would have been the correct course of action, to have an investigation. But they probably heard what she was saying and they were like, what the fuck are you talking about? Because they were framing everything in the most ridiculous context ever, especially Jenny Slate, who just felt uncomfortable because she received a comment about how important the sanctity of motherhood was when she received a ridiculously good stipend for new housing because she didn't like her old housing. Like,
Think about that. They probably thought that, and then they're like, that's ridiculous. What are you talking about? This doesn't make sense. We're hearing this secondhand from somebody who doesn't remember half the shit that she says. Okay, should we do a formal investigation into this when the actual people in question haven't like actually said anything to us? Probably not. I don't know, because the things that Alex Sachs was saying at that point to Jamie and Justin were probably outlandish as fuck. Okay, because they don't know what Jenny and Blake are saying behind their back. Jenny and Blake are just being their friends to their faces. And so they're probably like, what are you talking about? Why would we do an investigation? There's no way that what you're saying is true. By the way, you don't remember the answer to half the questions we're asking you. So, you know. Okay. Based on your conversation with Miss Slate, did you believe she was genuinely uncomfortable? Yes. Did Mr. Heath ever explain why Wayfarer would not be conducting an investigation? Not sort of tap danced around the idea that it would be better for all of this not to be on the official record. And this is where I call bullshit, especially because it's like, you don't remember why you were yelled at. You don't remember the context of the situation in which you were yelled at. You don't remember what happened after, what you said, what you like said to lead up to the yelling, what you said afterwards. You don't remember any of that. But you claim to remember that Jamie Heath said he didn't want this shit on the record. That's a little sus to me. Okay. I don't remember my middle name, but I remember Jamie Heath didn't want this on the record. That's fucking bullshit. I mean, just look at every page of the deposition before we got to here. It's insane. Like, why the hell would he take that seriously if this woman can't keep her story straight with herself? My God. Okay. Do you have an understanding what that means to you, that he didn't want the behavior written down, documented anywhere, in the event that someone wanted to talk about it again in the future? So this is her subjective opinion about the man whose job she wanted to take. Let's keep that in mind. And she's doesn't remember anything, but she remembers that. And also, if they didn't actually make a complaint to say these kind of outlandish things about the housing situation and about Justin saying the wardrobe for a character was sexy, why the fuck would they want that documented? Okay. Why would they want that documented if, first of all, it was never raised to them for real by the people involved? And second, like, this lady who is bringing it to them for the first time keeps saying, I don't know, when they ask her questions. Like, why would they want that on the record if it's possibly not true? Because Alex Sachs is clearly not a very reliable narrator from what we've seen so far. Okay. So, your impression is that Mr. Heath did not want Wayfarer to conduct an investigation into concerns about his and Mr. Baldoni's behavior because he didn't want a written record of it. She says correct. What do you recall Mr. Heath saying? Do you recall him saying anything specifically that gave you that impression? No! Okay, one more time for clarity. Okay, one more time for clarity. Your impression is that Mr. Heath did not want Wayfarer to conduct an investigation into concerns about his and Justin's behavior because he didn't want a written record of it. She says, yeah. The follow-up question, what do you recall Jamie saying? Did he say anything specifically that gave you that impression? Nah. No. What the fuck? Oh my God. That is insane. But that's your recollection. Okay. Why Wayfarer decided not to conduct an investigation into the behavior raised by Miss Slate. Yes. Direct your attention to Exhibit 6, blah, blah, blah. I think we might skip over. Yeah, they skip again, so I'm not going to read through this too much. Do you recall why you would have been texting Miss Lively on May 29th after just having, and of course they cut it out. All right. This. On June 1st, you sent Miss Janetti a text saying, we had a very good, tough chat with Blake. She was eloquent and on point.
called Jamie out in front of me and Justin kindly. Do you see that? She says, yes. What are you referring to here? I believe this was a meeting in her trailer about the concerns. On or around June 1st, you had a meeting in Miss Lively's trailer? That's what it looks like. I did not remember. You don't remember that? What do you mean you don't remember it? Do you recall who was at that meeting? I don't, but I assume me, Jamie, Justin, and Blake. So I think there was this meeting. I don't remember when it was or who was at it or what was said, but I think there was this meeting. Does this message you sent that Miss Lively called out Jamie and Justin in front of you refresh your recollection that you, Jamie, Justin, and Miss Lively had a meeting? It does a little. But we had so many meetings over the course of the shoot that I'm not certain I'm remembering the exact one. So you remember a discussion of the meeting, but not necessarily where it took place? No. Do you remember a situation in which Miss Lively called out Mr. Heath and Mr. Baldoni in front of you? Not, now I'm remembering, but I don't remember many of the specifics. But I think I remember that this was in her trailer. Huh. This lady remembers less about this significant time in her life than I do about my first year being a human being. Like, my infancy. I remember more about my infancy than Alex Sachs remembers about her time on the set of It Ends With Us. Oh my God. This is absurd. Like, this is actually absurd. Okay. What do you remember about what Miss Lively said during the meeting? Okay, so you don't remember exactly where it took place, why, or the specifics, but she answers this question somehow. Very little other than what I wrote. All I remember is her leaning against one side of the trailer. I think I was opposite her. Maybe Justin was here. Maybe Jamie was there. That's kind of a big detail. And I do remember now that I'm reading it that I would have to keep reading, but that she was very direct but professional, and that was it. So your recollection of this extremely significant event is that you have to look back at your text to determine whether or not she was professional. Okay, babe. That was 135. Here's 136, yes. If you turn to the message, on the other page, you write, he did try to clarify that he thought Justin told her about it. And Miss Janetti responds, this is the wife photo? Do you see that? I do. Do you recall Miss Lively raising to you, Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath, that she was uncomfortable with Mr. Heath showing her a video of his nude wife? As we know, there were no genitalia in that photo. Blake Lively says that he just approached her and randomly showed it to her, but there's no evidence of that. The Wayfarer parties say Justin and Blake had a conversation about this because they were talking about their vision for the birthing scene in the movie, which is very important for the movie. And then he goes up to Jamie and says, I just talked to Blake about this in your beautiful video with your wife, with your home birth. Can you show it to her? She wants to see it. And he brings it up to her thinking that he can just show it to her because why the fuck wouldn't he think that? Right? This is not an office job, guys. They're doing a movie where they're portraying somebody giving birth. And so he goes up and starts to show her this video of his wife after their baby has been born. And you can't see any genitalia. You don't see any parts. You see a baby. They're holding their baby. And it's not at all pornographic the way that it's been described. It's crazy. So that's what they're talking about here, I guess. Do you recall Miss Lively raising to you, Mr. Baldoni and Heath, that she was uncomfortable with Mr. Heath showing her a video? Yes, and I believe it was in this meeting she brought up that she had been shown a video of Jamie's wife giving birth. But as we know, the baby had already been born. There was a baby in the image, okay? So she just made that up. And did you understand Mr. Heath's wife to be nude in that video? Yes. Did you ever watch the video? No. Did you understand that Miss Lively was uncomfortable with being shown a video of her boss's wife giving birth nude? I believe she shared that at the time. So I noticed that in this line of questioning, they say she's nude, but they never mention that she was covered in the photo, in the video. They never mention that you can't see any body parts that are inappropriate in the video, right? Okay. I believe she shared that at the time. Did you think it was appropriate for Mr. Heath to show Miss Lively a video of his wife giving birth nude? No. But the thing is, Alex Sachs never saw that video. She never saw that video. She just took Blake Lively's word as gospel. Do you want your boss to show you a video of his wife giving birth nude? What kind of fucking question is that? She says no. But again, they're talking about this as if they weren't having a creative discussion about a birthing scene in a movie. It's ridiculous. He did try to clarify that he thought Justin told her about it. Well, that's important. Did you mean that Mr. Heath tried to clarify that he showed Miss Lively a video because Justin asked him to? I believe he was trying to clarify that he thought Justin had told her this is what the video is and that she said she wanted to see it. Mr. Heath thought Miss Lively wanted to see it to the effect that he thought Miss Lively wanted to see a video of his nude wife. Okay, did Mr. Heath say he thought Miss Lively wanted to see a nudie video of his wife? Or did Mr. Heath say the director and Blake Lively had a discussion about their vision for the birthing scene that they were going to film, and they discussed my home birth with my wife, and I believe that they discussed viewing the part of the video where my baby had been born and my wife and I were there after the home birth. Very, very big distinction, okay? My God. That's what it sounded like in the room from what I'm reading. I don't remember again. I don't remember. At 9:38, you wrote, yes, and there were other comments. As you sit here, do you have a recollection of what other comments Miss Lively raised concerns about? I don't. At 9:42, you wrote, the other piece was that she was like, you, Jamie, make jokes about how you can't make eye contact with people anymore, as if to undermine and lessen the importance of people not wanting to be comfy/cozy on set. So the thing is, we know that Blake Lively, hates the black man who made eye contact with her. And so when she invited him into her trailer to talk to her, insisted upon it, in fact, because he asked to do it the next day and she said, no, come in right now. When she insisted upon it and he, accidentally made eye contact with her for a second, she said that he was gawking at her body. She knew that she was nude when he was coming in, when she asked him to come in, but she was covered, like he didn't see any body parts. And then she's trying to say that somehow means people can't be comfortable on set because she asked someone to come into her private trailer to talk to her, have a discussion while she was unclothed. Like, what the fuck? It's gross. What do you recall Miss Lively sharing with regard to that statement? There was a lot of hugging and touching amidst the Wayfarer team. So hugging and touching, as we've seen in the footage, meaning literally hugging, high-fiving, patting on the back. Like, it's just seemingly sort of how they do business and interact with each other. And here's where we get down to the real meat of the problem here. These women are not used to being on the kind of set which we've seen them try to portray in the press as toxic positivity. So they're used to this, men who are directors screaming and shouting and stuff and being like hyper masculine and thinking they have control of everything and not giving them a voice. And then they thought they finally had a place where they could just run over everybody because the culture at Wayfarer is different because they have very different religious beliefs and they're very active in trying to give women a voice. They thought they could just run over everything. And they were cool with that. And then when they realized they had boundaries within their positions of their jobs, they thought we should punish these men for not giving us what we thought they said they were going to give us. So it's just kind of crazy. And it sounds like she was referring to how sometimes the guys would make jokes about how they couldn't do that, but not really. The joke would be, can't even make eye contact with people anymore. Well, yeah, if I were Jamie Heath and I was put in that bizarre situation where I'm a black man and a white woman is like, you made eye contact with me and now I'm going to raise hell, I would probably make jokes about that shit too. Right? Privately to friends. Like, who gives a fuck? It's bizarre. And she used that as an example to say everything is too comfortable on set. Can we make it more professional? So, okay, hold on here, babe. As if to undermine and lessen the importance of not wanting people to be comfy cozy on set. So you have a problem with them not wanting people to be comfy cozy, but then also you say here, it was used as an example to say everything's too comfortable. Honey, you got to get your story straight. My God. And she used that as an example to say everything's too comfortable. In your view, the comment that Miss Lively raised about Mr. Heath and Mr. Baldoni joking that you can't make eye contact with people anymore, did you view that to undermine and lessen the importance of people wanting to be comfortable in the workplace? She says, yes. Okay. You think it was appropriate for the two men in charge to joke about not being able to make eye contact with people? Well, if someone was such a vapid cunt to me, I would make those jokes privately too. Get the fuck over it, sweetheart. That's the world we live in. If you treat someone like shit, they're allowed to use humor to deal with it. Okay. In your view, Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath were making light of a behavior that made people uncomfortable in their workplace through that joke. Okay. And Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath were, the joke being, we can't even make eye contact with people anymore. She acts like they were saying, well, I guess we can't make eye contact with your third eye through your vagina. That's not what happened. Like, what's wrong with you? That's not even what they're alleging. My God. Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath were making light of concerns raised about their own behavior. It reads more general to me that just you can't do anything in the workplace anymore and not get in trouble. That may be more reflective of their own behavior. Well, that was absolutely true on their set. You can't do anything, including help out one of your actresses with an extensive, financial stipend beyond the means that you give to other people. You can't even help people, new mothers, get a safer place to live if they feel unsafe, pay more expensive to help them without them saying that made them feel uncomfortable. You can't do anything. It's true. God. Okay, so there's a question. In your view, does a comment joke about how you can't make eye contact, would it make employees feel uncomfortable coming forward with concerns about the workplace? It does not make employees feel comfortable. Okay. Sure. Do you recall during the meeting with Mr. Baldoni, Mr. Heath, and Miss Lively that Miss Lively also raised issue with Mr. Baldoni coming into her trailer uninvited? She says, only because I'm reading it here. You wrote to Miss Neidigh, and then she also mentioned that I guess on day 2, Jamie went into Blake's trailer and she was like, oh, actually, I'm getting my body makeup done. Well, you can come in if you don't look. And apparently he was looking in her direction the entire conversation when she turned around. So now it's the entire conversation. So she said to Jamie, I know you didn't mean to cop a look that 1 second you accidentally made eye contact with me. But now she's telling people he was gawking at me the entire time. Mm-hmm. What do you recall Miss Lively sharing? Nothing more than what you just read. So did you recall Miss Lively sharing with you that Mr. Heath had barged into her trailer while she was undressed? I don't recall. She doesn't recall a lot of important things, like I said. I don't recall if Miss Lively shared if she had her clothes on, but if I'm saying she was getting body makeup done, then she didn't have clothes on. And to your understanding, was she generally topless? Alex says, I don't actually know. Do you have recollections of Miss Lively specifically sharing that she was in some state of undress? Okay, I don't remember outside of reading this. Okay. Do you have an understanding why Miss Lively would say you can come in but don't look if she was wearing clothes at the time? Likely because she knew the conversation was important and she was professional and probably wanted to discuss whatever needs to be discussed. Did Miss Lively share with you that when Mr. Heath attempted to enter her trailer, she and her team yelled, no, 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 don't come in? I don't remember. Okay. Do you recall Miss Lively sharing that Mr. Heath had insisted on having a meeting with her when he entered her trailer? I don't remember. Do you recall Miss Lively conveying that she was uncomfortable with Mr. Heath looking at her while she was getting her makeup undone or done? I don't remember. Miss Janetti responded with regard to Mr. Heath entering the trailer, not good. You responded, nope. Do you see that? And again, saying not good and her responding nope was in response to Blake's allegations of what Jamie Heath did, not necessarily what actually happened. Okay. What do you remember being not good? That he was looking at her getting body makeup done when she asked him not to. And was it your understanding that Miss Lively was uncomfortable with that? That's what I perceived. Okay. It's not proof that he actually did that, by the way. Was Miss Lively doing something, or strike that? Yeah, of course you want to strike that. Did Miss Lively recount this story to you in a way that you perceived in a specific way that made you perceive she was uncomfortable? Not that I can recall. What was your reaction to hearing that Mr. Heath had entered her trailer uninvited and looked at her while she was getting her makeup done? I would imagine, I don't recall exactly, but I would imagine uncomfortable, like I'm rereading it now. You're uncomfortable even rereading it now. Yes. Why? Because I don't like that it happened. Why not? Because it's not appropriate for the workplace. And that's as it stands if the accusation were 100% true, which, as we know, it isn't. So, all right. Why is it inappropriate for the workplace for Mr. Heath to go into Miss Lively's trailer and look at her while she's getting her body makeup done? Do you really have to ask that stupid fucking question? And I know this is just how depositions work, but it's to a layperson, it's kind of ridiculous. All right. I know that our first production designer said to me at one point that at the end of the first round of shooting, he felt like he was leaving a cult. Who was that? Russell Barnes. And the unfortunate thing here is Wayfair Studios and the guys that run it, they operate a very, strongly with their Baha'i faith. And people have different cultural and religious values in this world, and we all have to work together. And I know that some people view some religions as a cult, and I personally don't. I don't care if you're Christian, Jewish, Baha'i. I don't care if you are, Islamic, a Muslim. I don't care. I don't care. Everybody has a right to their religious freedoms as long as you don't use it to hurt each other, or do anything nefarious. And so the guys who run Wayfair Studios, they have Baha'i values. And the Baha'i are unfortunately and unjustly, in my opinion, because I've since gotten to learn a little bit about the Baha'i faith, they have, their very strong values, and they run like a very positive set that's different than a traditional set would be. And in my opinion, that's a good thing, because the way that many Hollywood sets run sounds kind of toxic. But we had, Blake Lively's PR planting in the press several months ago, that, there was a problem with toxic positivity on Justin Baldoni and Wayfair sets. And that's because of their values. And so some people will call that a cult. And I'm like, if that's a cult, no, that can't be a cult, because cults are things that ruin people's lives and are terrible. And I know there are some people who are Christian, there are some people who are Jewish, some people who are Muslim, some people who are Baha'i, whatever, who say it ruined their life because they grew up in an environment where any religion can be honestly damaging and terrible if you're raised in an environment where it's applied improperly, and you're burdened by inappropriate standards, unattainable standards. But generally speaking, people who are Baha'i, they're just very positive people. They don't believe in talking shit about people the way that a lot of people do in Hollywood, right? Or just most of us in day-to-day life. They're good people, but some people who aren't, used to those values, accustomed to those values, and who don't agree with them might call it a cult. I personally myself, within the last couple of months, I had someone file a document in another court case in California saying I was a cult leader. Guys, I live alone. I'm streaming from my attic by myself, talking to you on my screen. I'm a fucking autist who hates social interaction in the real world. I don't like to be around people I don't know. I don't like to tell people what to do ever. I like to be left alone. And the thing is, I still have someone out there calling me a cult leader and trying to put it in front of a judge in the Laura Owens cases, where if you don't know who Laura Owens is, I think you're probably going to find out soon. So you should probably look it up. But anybody can call anyone a cult. Anyone can call anyone a cult leader. And the thing is, I just had friends. I have friends who agree with me, And this person who hates my opinions said I'm a cult and put it in a court document. And it's like, that doesn't make it true. So right here where they're saying this is a cult, putting this in a court document doesn't make it true. Because anyone who's ever met me knows I don't want to be a leader of anyone. I don't ever want to be a part of any organized anything, okay? Like, I just want to be left alone. It's ridiculous. So they use these inflammatory words, but the thing is, there's no basis for them. But unfortunately, some people will take that at face value, especially people who are very sensitive to religion, to religious abuses. And that's not what happened on the set of It Ends With Us. There was no religious abuse. But the person who said that about them being a cult might not have aligned with their values. And it's unfortunate that people throw around the word cult when there are people who suffer at the hands of real cults. You know what I mean? So I hate that. And I've had people say that I should make jokes and merch about things saying you cult leader or whatever. I'm like, no, dude, you don't understand. Like, cults do real harm to real people. And it's a really hard thing to break out of. And I admire anyone who's overcome that. I don't want to really make merch out of that or make a joke out of it. Like, I could have if I wanted to make a buck, you know what I mean? But I really hate when people misuse the word cult and try to convince people that just because others have different values than you do, they're a cult. You know what I mean? It just divides people in a way that's unnecessary. So, yeah. But that's my soapbox once again. 1 second, I'm going to take a sip. Okay. All right. So, anyways, are you aware of other crew members feeling Mr. Baldoni or Mr. Heath's behavior was inappropriate? And then, of course, they cut off. And they're talking about Book Bonanza here. Okay. Do you have an understanding why Miss Hoover would not say Mr. Baldoni's name at Book Bonanza? Well, because she's a cunt, if you ask me, but that's not what happened in this deposition. So I believe at that point I was aware that Blake and Colleen had discussed basically all of what happened to Blake on the film. I think we can stop there. Right? Your understanding was that Miss Lively had discussed with Miss Hoover how she had been treated by Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath on the film. Okay. At 8:44, you say neither of them would mention Justin's name. Who else were you referring to? She says, I assume Blake. She assumes. Again, she doesn't know who she was talking about. Okay. Even reading her own text messages in that context. It's your recollection that Blake also wouldn't say his name. Yes. Okay. All right. Do you recognize this as a text exchange between you and Miss Janetti? At 2:19 p.m., Miss Janetti says, call me. And later on, you write, she asked you, did you get any details back? You respond, Justin was very dismissive of her when she wanted to direct, and then used Jamie to try to manipulate her when he realized she could co-direct it after she got Daddy-O going. So that's a pretty specific thing, but here's what Alex Sachs has to say. They ask, do you see that? She says, yes. Do you recall what this text was in reference to? Alex Sachs says no. Do you recall if you and Miss Janetti had a conversation about concerns raised by Christy Hall with respect to Mr. Baldoni being dismissive of her? Yes, now I know what it's about. What do you recall with respect to Miss Hall's concern, if any, about Mr. Baldoni? That initially he was dismissive of her wanting to direct. I don't remember much more than that. So here we are again. The handful of women out of the many, many who worked on that film who did that, sorry, I'm trying to read the chat. This one says, the people who say that there was a problem are the handful of women who wanted more power than they had. He was dismissive of her wanting to direct, but he was the director. She's not entitled to direct the film. Hold on. What do you want, Max? Sorry. I wish Lauren read the chat. Guys, I spend so much time reading the chat. That's why you've been doing this for almost 3 hours. I don't know what you're talking about. What are we talking about? So, you can rehash it for me, or I can just move on. I don't know what else to say. But spending time on reading the chat is definitely not a problem that I have, I promise. So, anyways. Sorry, I probably sounded rude there, but the truth is I'm just tired. But anyways, guys, I'm sorry if I missed something. Like I said, I do my best. I do my best. All right. Okay. What do you recall with respect to Miss Hall's concerns? That she was dismissive. He was dismissive, and then she felt like he tried to use her for a cover with Blake and Colleen a bunch. Okay, whatever. Why? By saying he didn't mistreat all the women on the set? I mean, what do you want? This is ridiculous. That's fair, my V. Dude, no, I'm sorry. I was trying to be like playful, but I'm so tired that I probably sounded angry. No, it's totally fine. I'm sorry, man. I just, whatever it was, I missed, but I will try to pay attention if you put it back out there. Okay. When it's just me like this though, it's really hard to keep up. So it was your impression that Mr. Hall was concerned with Mr. Baldoni using her as a cover. Yeah, I guess so. She just doesn't want to be associated with him, right? What is that in reference to? That is that she didn't want to be associated with Justin and Wayfair. So she remembers that, but she doesn't remember anything else. She doesn't remember anything else. We're having so much fun on chat. We hate your missing. I hate it too, man. I'm trying to read the page, but I miss so much when I read the page. Give me one sec. The Colts jokes were wild. Well, the good news is I can watch this on replay. So in the chat's on replay. So I'll just go to the transcript and search. What do I want to say? Pumpernickel. Okay. So now when I go back later in the video and I search pumpernickel, it'll take me to the live chat at this point and I can see what you guys were saying. So you're all fucked. All right. Anyways, that's the last time I'm going to say pumpernickel for a while. Okay, I believe everything I wrote previously, blah, blah, blah. Mrs. Hall also share with you she didn't feel respected as a female voice on the team, and on a movie like this, that felt especially bad. Okay, well, that's subjective. Just so many things stacking up, people are so upset or pissed off about. I cannot believe how they just keep coming. You respond, I think this is where narcissism is dangerous. Fuck you. In this reference is your comment regarding Mr. Baldoni. She says, yes. Do you believe Mr. Baldoni to be a narcissist? As a non-physician, yes. Based on what? All the behavior I had witnessed for the preceding year and a half. Because he didn't give you what you wanted. Cunt. My God. Let's see. And was it your experience that so many things kept stacking up that people were upset or pissed about with respect to Mr. Baldoni and his behavior? Okay. Yeah. So you remember that? Okay. Things kept stacking up because people were pissed. You remember that? That's nice. It's only when Jamie / this isn't fair nonsense and revisionist history comes up that I'm like, come on, guys. What do you mean by Jamie? This isn't fair nonsense and revisionist history. She says, I would assume it's the we didn't do anything wrong as opposed to remembering what happened. So she thinks that their account of what happened was not real. And that Blake and all of the women who like were bringing up stuff about them helping them with their apartment fees and stuff were correct in saying that this was like a hostile environment. That's her opinion. Okay. She's welcome to have that opinion, I guess. It sounds like she wasn't present for a lot of these conversations. It also sounds like she doesn't remember most of these conversations. So her saying something's revisionist history is kind of fucking rich. Let's see. It was Mr. Heath and Baldoni's attitude they didn't do anything wrong. Okay. I believe so. She still doesn't know. Him and Jamie have a way of making women feel like shit. Do you see that? And some men. Yes. Okay. Well, anyone can feel like shit if they don't get what they want from somebody. There have been a lot of times in my life, for example, that I felt like shit when I didn't get what I wanted, but I understand that it wasn't the fault of the person who wasn't giving it to me. It just wasn't appropriate. It's like, I really wanted something, but I hadn't necessarily gotten the experience to, take that on or to have that role. Or I really wanted something, but I hadn't earned it yet. I didn't have the money. I didn't have, the time to make the commitment. Like, there's a lot of reasons you might get denied for something, and it might make you feel like shit, but it doesn't mean that you were harassed, and it doesn't mean it was a hostile environment. It means you might need to do a little bit of reorganizing in your priorities. So I can't help it if these people don't understand the difference. So you know what I mean? Okay. She's saying they made her feel like shit, which is like, we're getting a situation where she says they personally made her feel like shit, I guess, because she didn't get what she wanted. And this is not going to help their case, because it's like, of course she's saying what she wants people to hear to the questions that she wants to answer. And she's saying, I don't know, to everything else. So, all right. I remember, hold on. If you go down to the message at 3:03 p.m., you write, I remember you calling me around 2 one night, being like, what the fuck? Because so much of it was these minuscule microaggressions. Uh-huh. Okay. Was it your experience that Mr. Heath and Baldoni continued to engage in microaggressions during the second stage of filming? From what I remember, it was much better on the second round, but I will be honest, I don't remember with great specificity. That's something you should remember, babe. So microaggressions, anybody can perceive anything to be a microaggression. So here, when Men Are Canceled says, it's not Lauren's fault she doesn't read my DMs. If I said right now, that's a microaggression because I'm a lesbian, and you're saying that lesbians don't read DMs, and therefore you're being prejudiced against me because I'm a lesbian. Like, that's kind of what the vibe that I'm getting. Like, anyone can say anything is a microaggression. If you are somebody who walks into a situation with people that you already don't like, anything they do is going to piss you off. I call it, like a lot of people call it, this bitch eating crackers, right? Everybody has a bitch eating crackers. Blake Lively is my bitch eating crackers because everything she does upsets me. It pisses me off. Sorry, it pisses me off. It annoys me. All of you have a bitch eating crackers. In fact, anyone who's still here in the chat, tell me who your bitch eating crackers is, because we all have one. Where you walk into a room with this person, and it's like anything they do, no matter how small or unreasonable you're being, like anything they do enrages you. Like, they could be sitting there eating crackers and you'd be like, look at that bitch eating those crackers. I hate her. So this is like people coming into a room and Justin Baldoni's there bitch eating crackers. And so they're saying that everything was a microaggression when the truth is they didn't like him. He didn't give them what they wanted, and so now they're enraged by everything he does. Everybody's got a bitch eating crackers. All right. And crackers, crackers aren't the worst thing in the world, but when a bitch is eating the crackers, it's on. Okay. All right. Do you remember when I called Andy Davis a few weeks in and was like, Andy, he's inviting the department heads to go to the Russian baths with him? Okay, Russian baths, they're not like an orgy type thing, right? Russian baths, I think you might be like unclothed, but he invited people to a Russian bath, I guess. And this is, mind you, this is taking her testimony with full 100% absolute truth, right? Like, if you really believe this, he supposedly invited them to a Russian bath. Okay. And then Alex says, Andy, he's inviting the department heads to go to the Russian baths with him. So there was some people, the department heads, he said, I'm going to the Russian bath. You can go with me. What is that in reference to? She says, at the beginning of prep, Justin was going to a Russian bath in New Jersey for relaxation and was very excited about it. Came into one of our scout vans and said that he wanted to bring everyone with him at some point. So this is something that he does to relax, that he really enjoys. He likes the atmosphere for some reason. I've never been to a Russian bath, but I have heard about them, So I guess she thought that was unprofessional or inappropriate. But they said, do you think it was inappropriate? Do you think it was appropriate? She says, I didn't, but that's why I called Andy Davis to confirm. And then I spoke to Jamie about it. And did Mr. Davis confirm that Mr. Baldoni inviting cast and crew to the Russian baths with him was in fact not appropriate behavior in the workplace? She says, correct. Okay. And you know what? When I try to play neutral advocate here, I can see why if you worked for somebody, even somebody you liked, and they invited you to a Russian bath and you felt pressured to do that, that might make you uncomfortable. I don't think that was Justin's intention. And I don't think any part of that amounts to sexual harassment. It might just be like blurring the lines between friendship and coworkers. And you can say no to that. It's not like he walked in and was like whipping out his dick and being like, hey guys, this is what I'm going to look like at the Russian bath later. Want to come join me? Like, what the fuck? These people act like he's showing his penis all the time or something. But no, I don't think that that was harassment in any way, shape, or form. I think that people could construe that as inappropriate. I think that's honestly feedback that was not appropriate to invite people to a Russian bathhouse. If it is somewhere where there's like nudity and stuff like that, I could see that as constructive criticism, but it has no bearing on this sexual harassment lawsuit or creating an unwelcoming environment for women. So, I mean, a dude named Andy didn't want to go to a Russian bathhouse with Justin. Blake Lively was sexually harassed. So, like I said, constructive criticism, maybe that's not something that they wanted to be, talked to about. Fine. But, you just say that, the behavior stops or the uncomfortable thing stops and you move on. It's not harassment, right? It's okay, I didn't like that, so let's not do that again. Right. So, anyways, chat, for what it's worth. I don't need to be microaggressive towards lesbians when I can be mega aggressive. Oh, God. You guys are wild tonight. It's Friday night, I guess. All right. See, what did Jamie say? That I don't remember if he said it was appropriate or inappropriate, but he said that he would talk to Justin, and I believe he did. Okay. Cool. There's a remedy. Bet he never invited them to a bathhouse again. At 3:06, Miss Janetti wrote, everybody has something weird, uncomfortable, and bad to say. All right. Well, I have something weird, uncomfortable, and bad to say about a handful of influencers who covered this case. Does that mean that they sexually harassed me? No. So your experience that everybody had something weird, uncomfortable, and bad to say with respect to Mr. Baldoni and Heath on set. I didn't talk to everyone about it. Oh, so you just said everybody has something weird, uncomfortable, and bad to say, but you admit here, I didn't talk to everyone about it. But the people that I did, yes. Okay. Fair to say most people, yes. Well, again, I question your recollection of events because you keep saying, I don't know, in response to extremely, extremely important things. Right? Around the time of Book Bonanza, did you come to understand that certain cast and crew did not want to appear in press and promotion with Mr. Baldoni? That's not surprising. Everyone except Hassan. So Hassan is we're still fans of Hassan, I guess. He's actually pretty funny. Would that have been Miss Lively, Miss Slate, Miss Ferrer, Mr. Sklenar, and Miss Hoover, who did not, and Miss Hall, who did not want to appear? Correct. So here's again with the leading questions, like, would that have been these people? Yeah, sure. Miss, I don't remember. Thanks for laying it out for me. Blake's lawyers. Okay. Did you have an understanding as to why they did not want to appear in press? I believe because of everything that transpired or what they heard transpired. And that's important right here. What they had heard transpired. Because Isabella Ferrer, who she mentions here, Miss Ferrer, sent Justin this wonderful, glowing thank you text not too long before this happened, before they went to Book Bonanza, thanking him for being such a wonderful director, creating such a safe space on set for her to really grow into her role and give it her all, and saying what a wonderful person he was and what a wonderful project it was. And then you see pictures on the internet of Isabella Ferrer in Blake Lively's bed, and they're having a sleepover. And then all of a sudden, Isabella Ferrer won't say Justin Baldoni's name. Yikes. You believe that Miss Lively did not want to appear in press or promotion with Mr. Baldoni because of what she perceived to be inappropriate and uncomfortable behavior. That was my assumption. Same for Miss Slate. Yes. Okay. 161, we're going to 164. So we skipped a little bit here. They skipped some pages. Okay. Christy Hall won't do press with Justin. Correct. You write to the group, they all hate him. Okay. And that is, again, during the press run after Blake Lively has already talked to everybody and turned them against him. So, who was that in reference to? What was the timestamp on it? Okay. Oh, I assume Blake, Brandon, Isabella. Again, Isabella, who loved Justin and who praised him, sung his praises in private, has a sleepover, takes pictures with Blake in Blake Lively's bed, and then all of a sudden wants nothing to do with Justin. That's obviously not because of what happened on set, because Isabella Ferrer was there and she said it was wonderful. And then all of a sudden, total 180. Okay. And that's not just my opinion, by the way, guys. That's a fact. There are text message, there's text message evidence that came out where she said those things about how wonderful it was, how wonderful he was, and their relationship, director, actor, and how she was able to feel so comfortable and be herself on the set and really get into her role. I'm not just making that up. That's not just like, well, I think that's what happened. No, there's evidence of that. It's concrete. And then all of a sudden, there's evidence that she was in Blake Lively's bed in her sleepover. And then all of a sudden, she wants nothing to do with Justin. This is not like something that I have an opinion about. It's a concrete line of things that happened. So, all right. Okay, we're going to skip through that. And then she's praising Blake Lively's cut, I guess. Was it your opinion that the cut screened at Book Bonanza was the strongest cut of the film you had seen so far? Yeah. And that was the cut created by Miss Lively. She says, I actually don't remember, of course. Do you have any reason to believe it was the cut by Baldoni? I don't think so because of the date. Okay. Do you recognize this document as a text between you and Lively? Yes. You write, this cut is excellent. Like I said, the best thus far. Truly beautiful. Beautiful work, Blake. I think this is the last leg of the journey is going to be really sweet for everyone, and that's because of you. Colleen might be the mother, but you're the fucking fairy godmother for everyone. Honey, get some help. I am always at your disposal for whatever you need creatively or otherwise. I'm incredibly proud of this film. Uh-huh. I bet you are, bud. I bet you are. I am always at your disposal for whatever you need. I bet you are. Does that text reflect your recollection? Yes. Do you recall that in connection with releasing the film, Wayfarer had compiled a companion book? Yes. Okay. I'm giving you what's marked as 14, blah, blah, blah. And then they skip pages again. So, all right. Mr. Heath writes, I'm sending you Alex's notes. While there are some that are worth discussing, I want you to know that she is not always the best with bedside manner. So please read her note with that in mind. She is not a decision maker when it comes to this. Do you see this? Does it surprise you that Mr. Heath would send your notes to the editor or writer of the coffee table book and represent that you are not a decision maker? She says, no. Why? Because I wasn't one. Oh my God. All right. Give me 1 second here. I can do something real quick. Okay. All right. Does it surprise you? No, because I wasn't one. Is that consistent with your experience that Mr. Heath and Mr. Baldoni sidelined you completely? So she's, again, mad that she didn't have more power as a producer. I think they might have skipped some pages. Yeah, they skipped the page again. This is an email from you to Todd Black, Justin Baldoni, and Jamie Heath. Okay. Right. Do you know whose notes they are? I don't recall. Okay. Do you recall if you wrote these notes? I don't. What? They're your notes or not? It's a yes or no question. Okay. The notes are describing the director's cut. Yes. Do you recall whether Mr. Baldoni, in fact, wrote these notes that are attached to the email? I really don't. In the first paragraph, it reads, this is now a PG-13 film through and through. All swearing has been removed, aside from one F word placed in a very important moment in a non-sexual way. Making this film PG-13 has proven without a doubt to be what's best for the film and the audience. Was that your view with respect to the PG-13 rating of the film? I think I think at the time I was supportive of PG-13. I mean, it's almost always better for a mass audience for films. We originally were supposed to make an R-rated movie, and so that was a little controversial internally when it needed to change, but I believe I supported the PG-13. So the thing is, Sony themselves wanted a more R-rated movie. And the book, the mass audience for this film was going to be fans of the book. So for this film in particular, where it had kind of a colloquial saying cult following, it was people who expected the movie to reflect the book, and the book is full of sexual content and bad words and stuff like that. That's more adult. And so Sony wanted that. And Justin said, we're going to incorporate that into the film like Sony wants. And so this is kind of weird to me, but yeah. Okay. I think at the time I was supportive of PG-13, blah, blah, blah. And did you say PG-13 is almost better for mass audience? Why? Because it can reach more people. More people can go see it. A younger audience can go see it. Maybe this didn't need to be for the teenies, you know? I'm handing it to you. There's some exhibit here. And while that's passed around, do you recall meeting at Miss Lively's home in which she expressed concerns with Baldoni and Heath's behavior? Yes. Okay. There's a screenshot of notes that have 30 points there. If you could take a minute and read through those, my question for you will be whether the 30 points identified on that page are consistent with what you recall Miss Lively speaking to you during the January 4th meeting. Okay. Sure. 1 second, guys. I gotta pop this in real quick. Sorry, guys. I'm trying to do something real quick. Give me 1 sec. I'm going to mute myself real quick. Sorry, that was urgent. I had to do it right now. Okay, anyways. It's almost 12:30. Damn. Is she finally texting me back, chat? I don't know what platform you messaged me on, but the truth is I almost never check my DMs. So, I get busy. So it's not intentional, I promise. All right. Anyways, whether the 30 points identified are consistent with what you recall Miss Lively speaking to you during the meeting. She says, yes. Are the 30 points identified in paragraph 20 consistent with what you recall? Yes. I don't remember every point one by one. I remember most of them. Okay. Was Miss Lively eventually awarded PGA? Yes. You submitted a letter in support of her obtaining that, correct? Yes. Did you speak with other cast and crew about submitting letters? I spoke with other crew. Thanks for that, I guess. Let's see, that was page 176. We're at 178. Okay. There's a letter she received in support of PGA mark. Okay, that's what we're talking about here. Nothing too crazy. Did you agree that Miss Lively deserved the PGA mark? Yes. Okay. And then they skip pages here again. A lot of pages this time, from 178 to 236, it says. The top of this page says, was Mr. Heath someone commenting that, oh, Mr. Baldoni looked hot or sexy? Was she in costume? I believe so. So he wasn't commenting on her street appearance, correct? Correct. So they confirm here, and this is when Justin's lawyers are talking, that he was not, in fact, just commenting on her appearance. They were talking about her wardrobe. Okay. Do you know whether the character was going to be in a scene that included sexual content? It says her character was never in a scene with sexual content. So it's probably talking about Jenny Slate. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. It says Miss Slate. Let's have the same questions with Miss Lively. Are you aware that Miss Lively complained that Mr. Baldoni said she looked sexy? Yes. And was she in costume at the time? And then what do you know? They cut off her answer. Okay. Here's talking more about interruptions in the Zoom call that did not please you. And you told Mr. Baldoni, right? No, I actually didn't. But he apologized. He did. So he knew or felt he had been impolite. Is that the right word? She says, yeah, impolite is not harassment. And apologized to you. Correct. Do you think Mr. Baldoni cut you off during that call because you were a female? And that's important. I don't know. But I was the only person on set that he consistently yelled at. Consistently being 3 times, and as I mentioned before, hours ago at this point, this was during a scene where he was very heated. We had to keep in character and keep that angry energy for a fist fight scene where he lashed out, I guess. And otherwise, the yelling was not on set. It was apparently twice at Zoom meetings. So I think we're all going to be okay. Let's see. You understand that? Do you recall when the film premiered? Okay. In respect to Mr. Baldoni's presence, had Miss Lively made any demands? What I had been told was that they shouldn't be on the carpet together, and they would be in separate theater and would be having a separate party. Okay. Were you aware of efforts by Miss Lively to have the cast and crew defriend Mr. Baldoni on social media about this time? I was not until the press started reporting about it. And do you know, as you sit here today, whether or not that's accurate? I don't. And you don't know whether or not Miss Lively froze Mr. Baldoni out of the marketing, is that correct? I had heard that she was really running it, but I didn't technically know if he was also talking to them on the side. I think he knew, babe. I know marketing and publicity work kind of sometimes just having 2 conversations about things. Why do you think that is? At around the time of the premiere, when you texted she was virtually taking over the film, did you have any discussions with Mr. Baldoni on the subject? So she texted that she was virtually taking over the film. Lively was taking over the film. So that text was back in post that I was about 2 months before the premiere. I believe I did talk to Justin around when that sort of final takeover was happening. And I think that was one of our last conversations. And by the way, in those text messages, she's like, this is bad. Blake's taking over the film, because those text messages are publicly available. So, and what did Mr. Baldoni say to you? I think he was upset. Yeah, I think so. If I remember correctly, he was kind of shockingly in good spirits and accepting of the whole thing. Would you say he was very positive? Uh-huh. Did she ever complain to you that the script did not accurately reflect the book? No. What do you know about the entry on the list having to do with Mr. Baldoni contacting Miss Lively's trainer? I knew about that incident really right after it happened because Justin asked Jamie and I to come to his apartment, and he walked us through exactly what happened. He was really shaken by it, upset, embarrassed, felt trapped. What exactly did Mr. Baldoni tell you about the incident with Miss Lively's trainer? Well, he said that he had asked the trainer what her weight was because he had a back injury, and he was going to have to be lifting her in one of the intimate scenes. And I guess the trainer, I don't even know if the trainer responded, but the trainer took that question and went to Ryan and Blake and told them about it. And what happened that day was that Ryan and Blake confronted Justin about it. It sounded like they were very upset, asked him why, how he could possibly do that. Again, I don't remember all the details, but it sounded like it went on for a bit. And then Justin was very upset. So he called Jamie and I to come hear about it. So at this point, Alex Sachs is still somebody that Justin's confiding in. And all the meanwhile, she's going behind his back saying all these horrible things about him, which is just wonderful. Did Justin, do you know if he ever apologized? I believe he did, but I don't exactly recall. As a producer of a movie in which the lead actor has to lift the lead actress, did you find anything offensive about Mr. Baldoni trying to find out how much she weighed? I don't know that I find it offensive. I understand it on a practical level. But she was a woman who had just had a baby and was clearly uncomfortable with her body and her weight. That's a Blake problem, not everyone else's problem. So it was more of an insensitive, stupid question that maybe we could have gotten the answer another way. How would you get the answer another way? Hey, Blake, step on this scale for us. That would have gone well, right? How would you have gotten it another way? He asked privately, where nobody else could hear or read the conversation, hey, I have a back injury and I have to lift X amount of weight, and that I need to know what amount of weight that I have to lift because of this injury. And they're like, this was the most publicly humiliating thing ever. Like, no, the stupid ass trainer went and gossiped to Ryan and Blake about it when he shouldn't have. And they made a huge deal out of it. Nobody ever would have known about that conversation had the trainer, Blake and Ryan, not turned it into a gossip thing. Ever. It never would have been a problem. The trainer should have kept his fucking mouth shut because he had 2 clients in that situation. And rather than protect the privacy with his clients, he decided to go to one of them and try to be the hero because they had more money and influence. Okay. That is the end of it. Finally, 3 hours later, guys. I did not expect to be sitting here this long talking about this. Okay. So I'm going to go to bed. It is 12:30 in the morning. Finally get a decent night's sleep. Hopefully tomorrow. I might take tomorrow night off. We're going to find out. I'll let you know pretty soon. Yeah. So that's about all I got to say about it. So anyways, I'll talk to you later. Thanks, everyone. Oh, let me read these real quick. Just the Mess Official. Thank you for the $2. AS is okay. Well, if you ask Santa, that's not so bad. Elisa Aloya 22. Thank you for the $5. Isabella was a huge disappointment. Her head spinned like The Exorcist. It really did. It really did. All right. Thanks, everyone. I appreciate you. Don't forget to hit a like for me, and I'll be back probably Sunday. We'll see. All right. Bye.